Diane, can you say something? I'm checking out my speakers.
Hello, Mary Alice.
Yeah, I can't hear you. Okay, 1 second.
Good evening. For the purposes of this meeting, could we promote Jessica Black and Karen Sims to be able to report to the town board? Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have all? Christopher Evans still needs to be admitted as a town board member. Okay, so we have Jessica, Karen. We're just waiting on Christopher Evans to be admitted.
I'm waiting for Christopher Evans to accept. So
Gotcha.
I sent him the
Okay.
invite.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started then. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, March 14th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans, Ms. Hersey, Ms. Colasetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin,
Here.
Ms. Chenoweth,
Present.
Mr. Williams.
I mean, Mr. Harris.
Who's Mr. Harris?
I believe he'd be representing Township Assessor's Office.
Oh, okay. All right,
And
Mr.
could
Harris.
this- I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is a point of order. If also Nicole could be promoted as our accounting operations manager. I see that she's joined. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the February 14th, 2022 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Chandra. Are there any substantial corrections? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
yes,
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
yes,
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is additions. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Next is public participation. If anyone would like to address the Cunningham Town Board, please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hand. We'll go on to committee to verify bills.
Good evening. So this past month, in our town bills report, we had $36,997.80 in the town fund expenditures, $56,578.40 in the general assistance fund expenditures. And that brings us to a total of $93,576.20. I also wanted to introduce Nicole Filya, who has been our accounting and operations manager since August of this past year. And she's responsible for our financial accounting. And so she or I could answer any questions that you have about the bills.
Any questions? Mary Alice.
Danielle, so I know that last time, I think it was last time that you had paid for some security in the, on the California properties. And I noticed that there was another charge for Hart Technologies for $2,300. Is that part of that system or is that something else?
So Mary Alice, yes, we had, what we did was, it was like 4 installments for the whole security system for all of the cameras. So,
Okay.
and that was, excuse me, our 4th and last.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on either of these funds? Okay, we have a motion for approval.
I'll move approval of the town fund to be put on file.
I'll second.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by Jaya. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
yes,
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
yes.
That motion passes. Next up, reports of officers. We have a presentation of Employment and Education Opportunities Program.
Great. And so I wanted to introduce Jessica Black. She is our case manager as of last year. I moved her into the position of managing our renewed education and employment opportunities track. This in the past was referred to as the community work program. And we really, with observations over the last 5 years about what works and what doesn't work, and with the desire, especially during COVID, but also seeing our participants cycle in and out of very low wage, temporary service industry, difficult on the body jobs. We really wanted to do more and do better for our participants. So we have retooled our education and employment. We've retooled community work program into an education opportunities employment program, and with the support of a social work intern last summer and Jessica working together to basically landscape various educational opportunities that would be appropriate for our participants. We've been working on the design piece and have launched that with the new year. So essentially, I've asked Jessica to attend this meeting and give a PowerPoint presentation. She'll need the ability to share her screen here in a second, but she'll give a brief PowerPoint presentation about this. I think the town board members Mary Alice and several others asked for additional detail on the program. As you know, we've launched a lot of new programs. I'm happy to provide detail on any of them, but this one is the newest, is very, it's exceptional, and we're looking forward to really partnering with all the educational programs in the community to basically help participants level up what opportunities are available to them. So with that, I will pass it to Jessica, who will give you the presentation. And then I'll give my staff report after. And then William Harris, I'll call on you if you have something from the assessor's office.
Hi, thank you, Danielle. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so this is our new Education and Opportunities program. Just an overview of the program. It's part of our General Assistance Program. The Education and Employment track aims to empower participants to move from our General Assistance track into hopefully the workforce and better wages, as Danielle stated. To be eligible for the program, participants must already be a General Assistance participant. Of course, they have to reside within Cunningham Township and make less than $600 a month. They also have to agree to pursue education and employment and can't receive any other cash benefits such as SSI or SSDI. There are two options on the EEO track: the employment track, in which participants will engage with work readiness opportunities, and the education track, in which participants will engage in educational opportunities. Participants may engage in both educational and employment opportunities to meet their required work hours for participation. Some of the education partners that we have are Parkland College. They have many different options for our participants to engage in. There's the workforce training program, adult ed, where they could do things like get their GED, the Career Center, where they could train for resume writing, mock interviews, help with cover letters. The Parkland Pathways program, which is dual enrollment with the University of Illinois and Parkland, and the Parkland Read program, which will help with basic math and English skills. There's the Odyssey project at U of I. That is a year-long, 2-semester free college classes where they will receive 8 credit hours from the University of Illinois that are transferable. Urbana Adult Education. They have programs where you can get your high school diploma, CNA programs, and also English as a second language program. Additionally, the YWCA Strive program is computer literacy classes for women, as well as workforce training skills. As of right now, our employment partners are Salt and Light and Urbana. We do have other prospective host sites, Sola Grasha Farms, the Channing Murray Foundation, Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, and we are open to other offers from anyone else who would like to host our employment participants. We will provide, as case managers of the program, referrals for help with financial aid, scholarships, and tutoring, transportation in the form of a bus pass, assistance in accessing technology and affordable internet, support in accessing healthcare, including primary care, mental health care, and substance abuse treatment, and other supportive services as needed. And that is it for me. Thank you all so much.
Any questions for
Thanks.
Jessica?
Yeah, and I just want to mention Jessica is a graduate of the Odyssey program. So when she came on as a part-time staff member, she was coming, I think we were still involved in the Odyssey program at that time. We're happy to answer any questions.
Chris?
Thank you, Diane. Just a quick question. Since this is new, do you have any sense of how well received it is by participants?
So I actually find that a lot of people, we have a question on our application that asks if people are interested in education. I would say somewhere around 70 to 80% of the folks applying are really interested in education, whether that be something from a GED or workforce training, or just entering into college classes. So we actually have a lot of interest in education coming through the door.
Grace?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation about this program. I really appreciate that information on it. I was wondering if there's like a stipend or pay associated with this.
So yeah, they get our $300 a month for other general assistance participants. And then some of the programs, for instance, Parkland Swift, actually have stipend programs built into them as well. So they could potentially be getting a double benefit, but not all of the programs have stipends outside of our regular general assistance.
Okay. And so it's general assistance participants who qualify for this who have to make less than $600 a month. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sharice. You're muted, Sharice.
Yeah. Is there a reason why they can't get SSI or anything else? They have to, but they're making less than $600 a month, but they can't get SSI or any other.
I can address that question. So currently the program is nested under our general assistance program. And so the way general assistance works is that you can't receive any other cash assistance. We have discussed whether it makes sense to take it outside of general assistance. And that would be a decision I would want to make in consultation with staff after we kind of launch and review this program. Because so general assistance kind of per the public aid rules at the state level is constrained in that way. But I have the discretion of basically ending the CWP program, right? And then starting a new program that's on the stands next to general assistance that would have more flexibility. So I think we're going to consider that going forward, but for now, we'd like to keep it where it's at and kind of see how it goes. I do think, just so that you know, Sharice, we do have a disability and wellness track, and folks on that track also show an interest in working. And so we have a relationship with DHS, the Department of Rehabilitation Services, where they basically do career coaching and counseling with somebody with a disability to help them typically do part-time work that accommodates their disability. So if we do have somebody, they're not receiving SSI yet, they're still on GA, but if we do have someone with a disability who would like to pursue work or education, there's actually support and sometimes funding through DHS for that. And that would be on a different track.
Okay. So I guess my other part of that is this. So then if they want to participate in this program, they can only be getting general assistance. They can't be getting anything else.
Correct. They could be applying for those other things. So we do have families on our track who receive general assistance who are applying for TANF. And we offer 3 months essentially of bridge programming until they get TANF, and they could qualify during that time to also get training support.
So if they're if they're in between, like they're in the middle of qualifying for something and they're getting general assistance and they're in your program, will they have to choose between getting general assistance and SSI or getting out of the program?
Well, they will, although what we've discussed is that we're going to support people in completing their semester. So let's say they receive, they no longer qualify for general assistance. We're going to work with them to complete their semester and graduate from that program. But yes, then after that, they would essentially, either have a job, receive SSI, maybe they received, they got on TANF during that time. So the one thing is we don't want to pull the plug on somebody in the middle of a semester, but other than that, yes, once they complete that goal, then they would move on to that other, they could essentially receive both for a short period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Alice.
Thanks, Jessica, for bringing this information to Township. I appreciate it. Grace had one of the questions that I had, which was the SWIFT program, because I know we've been hearing a lot about the SWIFT program, and I know that it comes with a stipend. So I don't want to dissuade people from joining the SWIFT program if it counteracts with that $600 limit. So my question to you is, have you encountered any scenarios in which people don't join SWIFT or don't pursue that because it's going to put them over the income qualification?
So as of yet, we haven't had anyone go through the SWIFT program. However, Jasmine and I have talked about how the stipends would affect their general assistance. And because we haven't gone through it yet, we're not 100% sure how SWIFT works, but there is another program that has a stipend. And the way that it works out is that they would basically lose 1 month of GA. So what we would try to do is basically time it to where they would lose the least amount, or as we go through the program, potentially tweak it as we encounter this more, so that they would either not lose benefits or lose the least amount of benefits.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And I have a question to Jasmine about whether or not we should raise the income limits for the folks in the EEO track. So last week, before this presentation, Jessica presented to the staff, and that was one of the questions that came up. Basically, we don't want to create a situation where people are choosing an either or. And I have a way of addressing that by raising the income limits for people in the EEO track. The issue is I don't want people to stay in our track forever and be making, say, $1,000 a month. Like the GA program is really meant for very low income residents. So I think it would be time limited, right? But I don't, we don't want those weird situations where someone, misses a check, or, they have a hard time budgeting because they are over income limitations. So we'll be looking into that as we onboard people into these programs. And I know there's a lot of, interest in the SWIFT program because it comes with a stipend. It's well regarded and, has a lot of openings and opportunity right now.
Jaya, did you have a hand up before?
I did, but the question was answered. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Grace.
On that same kind of track, I was wondering, big picture question, kind of like if this is moving towards something else, which it kind of sounds like you were saying, kind of like starting in another direction for a more independent program. And I was wondering just how it works in the sense of, is the township are you coordinating people to other existing programs, or covering like costs for any of it? Like, so there's no stipend, but if they have costs for those classes, are those covered? I'm just trying to figure out how it works for a participant.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have talked about covering certain costs. We would want people to apply for scholarships as much as they could, because there is access to those are available in the community. But we've talked about covering costs. Like, for instance, the Parkland Computer Training Center has some classes that require like an office purchase or something like that. And we would cover those costs. Does that answer your whole question, or was there another part that I missed? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, just kind of wondering if this is connecting people to those existing resources, or if there's kind of a unique thing, or it's higher access by the coordination, or covering fees, or how that works.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of connecting people with resources, but there's also a component of, if we see a need, and we can help cover that, and there's not any other way to cover that we would help them have that access.
So everyone in this program receives a bus pass. If they are exiting into an employment situation and they need work clothes or boots, we purchase those, which are actually under our current program. And if there's any, for example, like it can cost to take the GED exam, so we would cover any fees or exam fees. And then one of the things that this program links up to, that Jessica also runs, is the digital inclusion program that we have. And so we've been working to get laptops, tablets, cell phones, and communications into folks' hands. So there's a lot of barriers that aren't just signing up for the program that we experience with our participants. Sometimes it has to do with building confidence, like working with them to take steps to build confidence and then have all the resources, and there's small little resources that are in the way for them to move into that program. So there's, essentially we do a pretty intensive intake process, much more than for the general assistance participant, where we really look at career exploration and education exploration, and we help to direct people and then provide, we just remove whatever barriers are in the way of them accessing that educational opportunity. And I would say transportation is the #1 barrier, but there may be others.
Thank
I'm
you.
so sorry. I wanted to mention too, Danielle, because you were talking about barriers, that there are even some programs, all of the Parkland students can have childcare provided to them, because that's another barrier. And Parkland provides free childcare for all enrolled students. So any of our participants going through Parkland would also have access to that. And I just wanted to mention that as well, because it's worth mentioning.
Okay, and if anyone has further questions, can they contact Jessica then?
It'd probably just be best to shoot me an email and I can direct it to Jessica or Jasmine.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. So next, thank you, Jessica. Appreciate your presentation and your work on this. I just wanted to point out a few highlights from the supervisor's memo, if you want to pull that up. We continue to have, I would say, our general assistance roles have become manageable, which is great. It allows us to do things like the EEO program to provide deeper and more intensive services. And essentially, we continue to see the number of homeless residents go down. So we were just feeling very good about that piece. I will be in this next budget year looking at doing an increase in general assistance. $300 is low. And as we've seen the minimum wage go up, the general assistance, and we've seen inflation in our community, we should look at doing an increase. So I'm looking to the supervisors of Illinois and other townships to see if, what makes sense for an increase. We continue with our disability and wellness track. We've helped 14 residents. We had 16 awarded SSI last fiscal year and 8 this year. So we're seeing higher than average awards for SSI, and that's great ever since we put the SOAR case manager in position. I would say with transportation assistance and vaccination assistance, those are pretty leveled out. These are similar numbers to what we saw last month. Rental assistance, we are seeing a very large influx of rental assistance applications. We're having, there will be weeks where we have 30 to 40 applications come in. That's a pretty large number. We are working with the Bridgewater Sullivan Life Center. They have access to state funds that are otherwise closed to provide significant rental assistance and energy assistance to folks. So, but they must be COVID impacted to receive that assistance. So we met with their staff last week as well as the week before to really understand the referral process and make sure we're doing appropriate referrals. And then we continue to package rental assistance apps. So we did 8 last month, and I expect that to really spike in this next month as we move through quite a few rental assistance applications. We're still doing up to 3 months of rent in a 12-month period with no minimum income requirement. That is for rental arrears. We also have a number of residents who are moving around with the eviction moratorium lifting, or people wanting them to leave, friends or family asking them to leave. We do move-in assistance for folks who are doubled up or homeless, and we're seeing an increase in those applications as well. And there is a minimum income so that people can maintain rent after they've moved in. So housing advocacy this number has jumped quite a bit in recent months. We're now up to 284 participants that we have helped in a little less. It's been about 1 year and 3 quarters. That represents 173 households. And we now have a 40% success rate in moving people into subsidized housing, 70 households. That's really, again, when I started, I think our success rate when we did light housing advocacy was 5%. It was really a rare situation when we could move people into housing. The Housing Authority had an open voucher wait list for the housing choice vouchers. we did, as we always do, whenever there's any wait list that's open with the Housing Authority or any HUD funded group in town, we did an intensive call through. We had a target list of about 100 households that we knew were really on the edge, and we did intensive outreach. So we ended up assisting 32 of those families. Actually, I guess it was 112 households called or outreach to, and 32 families that we assisted in applying. Again, this is applying for a lottery to be one of the 1,000 people put on a wait list to wait for housing. I just want to be clear about that. So it's a long process, but you got to start somewhere. With Pinewood, we continue, things have been pretty stable. Pinewood is basically full except for the statewide referral network units. We've been listing households that with a disability or who are homeless on that network and working to help them move into those last available units. That has been a very successful project. I strongly encourage us to look at future projects. And I know from a meeting I had with the IDA recently with our state representative that they're really looking to fund downstate programs, new construction for programs like this. So I think it would be appropriate for us to kind of look at what's the next Pinewood that we would like to do. You know, what's a kind of target population that could, and how could we build some new construction in Urbana? So the COVID housing vouchers have pretty much, I have a couple of things on here that we're still helping people move into housing, but essentially this voucher opportunity is closed because most of the vouchers have been used. So we have 35 people have received those vouchers. We've made 76 referrals, and those who have received vouchers, who we helped, we provide housing navigation services. That's a big piece of trying to get folks into housing. We continue to do housewarming gifts. Under Bridge to Home, we're using that term to refer to our entire continuum of homeless services. We did receive notification from the city of Urbana that we could spread, our grant. We have about $310,000 in funds through September, which most of those are COVID dollars. And we've been engaging in an intensive street outreach program. We've worked with 46 residents so far. Very few remain unsheltered. We have several in hotels if they are medically fragile and unable to stay in the See You at Home shelter. So last month we actually housed 6 individuals in hotels, and when they're able to exit into the shared shelter that they do. If you look at the next page, we started a new program called Good Morning Hot Breakfast for Homeless Residents. It's been a very popular program. Our homeless participants do not oftentimes get a meal until Daily Bread opens at lunch, and then they get a sandwich for dinner, which is a very light dinner. And so there is no breakfast option that I'm aware of. So we've started to do a delivery to the all 3 shelters. So the dry shelter and the 2 low barrier shelters, it's 100 sandwiches organized by 3 different vendors that I have been working with. Although the funding for that will likely run out April 15th when the low barrier shelter closes, I'm really hoping to use private donations to continue it. It's very popular. The residents really appreciate, they get a hot protein-rich breakfast and a piece of fruit or 2 every morning, 7 days a week. And we feel it's important for people's physical and mental health that they continue to receive that support. And then the rapid rehousing program, we do up to 12 months of rent. We have 6 active households in that. And then we have our emergency housing for families. So you can see that we've served 43 households since we started basically right as the pandemic hit. Last month, we served 6 households. We had 2 families who moved out. 1 exited with an emergency housing voucher. We're currently serving 8 Urbana children with housing. Our utility support has slowed somewhat. There are a couple of other programs in the area. We are the payer of last resort, so we've been referring people to water and sewer opportunities and the Bridgewater Sullivan work, but we have continued. Last month, we helped 4 households. As we see the the warming happen, Ameren will they will conduct shutoffs now that it's warmer. So we're kind of looking towards that. The Unitarian Church, which seeded that fund, did another round of fundraising for us and sent us a check. I think it ended up in the bills this month. That check did. So we really appreciate the Unitarian Universalist Church for seeding that fund and taking leadership and continuing to replenish it. You can see eviction tracking and prevention. There was a pretty significant first appearance. We went from 11 to 40. And I actually haven't gotten a handle on why that is. So I will try to investigate and get further information as to what was going on with that piece. But it had been pretty steady in the teens and 20s for a while. The digital inclusion campaign continues. We had we just had an event outside the Common Ground Food Co-op on Friday. We have another one at Lincoln Square outside of Common Ground on the 25th. This is from 12 to 6. You basically come, and if you income qualify, you walk away with a phone, which is a great thing. People really love that program. Our plan is to do an event at least once a month, if not twice a month, to continue to get phones out. I will tell you, this was a big barrier for working with our participants, was just the communication piece and being able to help stay in contact with them. And with this partnership we're doing with the Lifeline providers locally, we've really changed the game on that, and we have much better results in terms of staying in contact with our participants. Bucket Brigade continues. We saw an increase last month. We helped over 276 neighbors. 98 of them were children. We've helped over 5,500 people since we started that when the pandemic hit. And we're seeing a lot of requests for hygiene and household items. A couple other things of note that are kind of special projects. Solidarity Gardens, we launched as a way to grow food for our community. And this last month, we held a affiliate garden and grant program launch on March 5th at the Phillips Recreation Center. And we had garden leaders from many of the main gardens, including Learman and Urbana, as well as the Wesley Food Pantry. They actually run a garden up at Public Health as well as near Wesley, and then the Habitat for Humanity gardens. I've listed the gardens that were participating here. And part of the reason I did that is if you know anyone who would like to participate in Solidarity Gardens who's not on this list, if you could help connect me to them, I can give them information about becoming an affiliate in our program. Affiliates basically dedicate some portion of their gardening. It does not have to be 100%. To feeding their neighbors in need. So when there's a bumper crop, they share with our distribution network. And we do have an affiliates granting program that we've launched with grants up to $500 to seed your garden. So whatever that could be for tools or labor costs or whatnot, we are going to be accepting applications here shortly. We have an online application for that. So we're excited to do that. The gardens were really excited. A little bit goes a long way with gardeners, and that is all privately fundraised. So 100% of those dollars are not tax levy dollars. Those are private dollars that come to Solidarity Gardens. And Township is the fiscal sponsor for that program, and we manage those dollars. So you'll see that in future, those grants will come to the town board for approval, and it'll essentially be the township providing those grants on behalf of Solidarity Gardens. Lowberry Winter Shelter, I wanted to give you a heads up that that has gone very well, with the exception of a sewage issue that we had in late February. Thanks to CU Public Health, within 2 hours of realizing that we had to shut down the shelter and the men showing up to go into the shelter, 25 men who are actively homeless, Public Health had said yes, Red Cross had offered cots, and we organized to get those cots over to Public Health and used the lobby for 3 nights while a major sewage issue was addressed at New Covenant. So that continued to happen. We did, in the very cold nights, had about 3 to 5 more men than we actually had space for. That's a problem that we need to address. And I know both cities, the county, the townships, and the homeless service providers are looking at kind of what is the size of shelter that we need in our community. I think we got really close to right, but we weren't quite on it. Also, people are sent from other communities at times. It doesn't happen very often, but that could be part of the reason we were a bit over the tipping point. We do not have an option currently for participants and those shelters to stay after April 15th. So that low barrier shelter funding runs out April 15th. That's the time that the churches had agreed to. And although there were some thoughts of a new organization starting, that organization announced last week that it would not be in a position to take over April 15th. So essentially what I've done is we circled up with See You at Home, and our staff are training starting this week. Jasmine, my program director, is training their staff in housing navigation and working with them on exit strategies. So they've got they think they can absorb the women because there were only about 3 to 7 max women. They think they can absorb the women, but the 25 men is going to be very difficult. So they're looking for basically housing exit strategies, both for the folks staying at 70 East Washington Street as well as New Covenant. Our street outreach team is working with a handful, I think it's 8 of the 25 we are actively working with. And we will be case managing exit strategies for them, and the rest See You at Home staff is managing exit strategies for. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that piece, because we really need to get to 24/7 year-round emergency shelter for everyone. That is just where we need to be, and we're not there yet. Everyone pitched in for this winter shelter. It was very much appreciated, and we still have a structural issue in our community. And then the last 2 things I wanted to point out. One is that we have a source of income protection bill, and you all had voted in support of that. Thank you so much. I convened a meeting with Senator Bennett on that. We had Housing Authority Tenant Union and Professor Andrew Greenlee, who's an expert in housing policy at the university, and essentially working to say, how can we help move this bill? Because we're very close to passage. So there will be an update on the bill next week from the coalition to find out where that stands. But the window of opportunity, they have a short session this season. So the window of opportunity is really this next month. The last piece, and I'm really excited about this piece, it's a big initiative for us between now and October. We received a $20,000 grant from the Heartland Alliance to conduct outreach to Urbana low-income Urbana residents to help them access stimulus funds, child tax credits, earned income tax credits, child tax care credits. There's a lot of money on the table. If a family with 3 children who got 2 stimulus checks and paid for childcare applies, they get about $30,000. That's what I tell people is like, this is no joke money, 3 times the earned income tax credit as years in the past, plus the stimulus funds, half of the child tax credits, which were not paid last year, they're paid through your taxes. So we partnered with the VITA program at the College of Business, and basically we're doing their outreach for them. So we put up, you'll see, we mailed about 300 flyers to everyone we've worked with in the last year. We posted 30 yard signs. You may see those around town. We put our labor, put those up. We did an e-blast to 1,000 contacts, and then the school district amplified that. We asked them to do that. And we had a number of people sign up. Right now we have 24 participants who feel that they need some extra help beyond just going to VITA program. And so we basically have consultants or contractors who are meeting with them in the library, helping them do some navigation services. Sometimes it's immigration issues. I am also working with the YMCA on that. So La Linea is helping us with the ITIN number issue. And then in other cases, it's just getting social security cards and driver's license numbers and navigating irs.gov. I do want to let folks know who might be listening, there is free tax preparation for low and moderate income folks, right? It's totally free. They do your taxes for you. You go to Salt and Light during these times, Tuesday 1 to 7 or Wednesday through Saturday 1 to 5. You bring your tax documents, they scan them and give them back to you, so you don't ever lose them. They're not out of your control. They scan them and give them back to you. You answer a few short questions, they prepare your taxes, and then you come to look them over, sign, and submit them. But you have to do this. You have to come and speak to them by April 8th. So it's very time limited opportunity. They have a certain number of people they have to serve. They can work in Spanish, French, or English. And if anyone needs any extra help at all, other than you're ready to go, you got your tax documents, you can call Cunningham Township, and we will set up an appointment to help you kind of pre-flight what you need to bring to Salt and Light. Otherwise, just go straight to Salt and Light and they will prepare your taxes. They've been super helpful. We have a great relationship with them. I think that is it for the supervisor's memo. Any questions that folks have? We have been busy. That is the moral of the story. Go ahead, Mary Alice.
So Danielle, the tax preparation, do you know what the upper limit for income is for that? You said it was low and moderate income.
Yeah, low to moderate. Let me look it up because it depends on the size of the family.
Would you be able to just email us the information so that we can
Sure.
provide that to our neighborhood?
Yep, it actually says it right here, gross income of less than 58,000. Or you're over age 60 of any income, or you're limited English or have disabilities of any income. So I'm going to send you, I will send the link to the information to the city council right now.
Thank you. And then your memo, and perhaps it's somewhere else, but I had never heard of this organization, the Bridgewater Life Sullivan Center. So I was wondering if you can give me some background on that, and then perhaps tell me how that interacts with your office, RPC, other kinds of services in the community.
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about the history of that organization. What I know is that it is attached to, it is a foundation that is housed at a local church, but is a non-religious tax exempt 501c3. I think you're probably aware of the Bridgewater and Sullivan families in the community, and I think that they helped to initiate that. What I do know is that rental assistance was on the state level was sluggish to be distributed, and the Illinois legislature worked to make sure there were more access points for the state dollars for rental assistance, and Bridgewater Sullivan applied and became one of those access points. So essentially, in addition to RPC that had the ERA funding, there was another kind of access point for the state dollars that opened up. When I found out that this happened, I reached out to the Pastor Thomas there, and connected with their staff. And we invited them to our Rental Assistance Partners Coalition. So they are now actually part of both townships and the county and Bridgewater Sullivan. And I think for a while when the city had rental assistance, we had the city as well. Anybody who does rental assistance in the community, we hold at least 4 times a year, or sometimes more often, kind of coalition meeting that was started by Cunningham Township. So we created that coalition so that we're all kind of working in concert with each other. Our next meeting is actually shortly after spring break. But our last meeting, Bridgewater Sullivan came. We held a meeting. We made sure that their representatives were present, and they walked us through their program. And then more recently, like I said, because just like we did with RPC, anyone who's doing rental assistance that basically overlaps with our program, we become, as Township, the payer of last resort. That is what Township does. We're always the payer of last resort. So essentially what we did is we find out if there's an overlap, what are the criteria, and then we send folks appropriately to that. Just like we did with ERA, we packaged their applications and we sent them over to RPC, and we had a, pretty much, I would say 100% success rate, because if RPC didn't serve them, then we did. And same thing with Bridgewater Sullivan. We look at them, if they meet the COVID impact criteria, then we help them fill out an application, and we send that application over to Bridgewater Sullivan. If they are rejected for any reason, Bridgewater Sullivan Life Center lets us know, and then we consider them internally for rental assistance. So essentially, it's very similar to what we've had with RPC, except RPC's ERA program is now closed for new applicants.
Right. So RPC's funds also, in addition to rental assistance, also assisted with mortgage for COVID impacted families. Does the Bridgewater Sullivan Life Center, does that also have funds to help people with their mortgage if they were impacted by COVID?
I don't believe so. I believe it's only rental assistance. I
Okay.
do know that the state is about to open up, and maybe they did already. We don't work with a lot of mortgage holders, so I'm not an expert in this, but I'm pretty sure the state is either about to or has already opened a program for mortgage holders. I know
Okay.
that was in the works.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a report from the Township Assessor's Office? I don't see William Harris on anymore.
Yeah, I might have run him out of his time slot.
Let me see if he's in the, not in the waiting room. Okay. All right, we'll move on to, is there any unfinished business? I don't believe there is any. New business.
Okay, so new business. Yes, so the first will be a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative for services to address community violence, trauma-informed care training, and organizational assessment. And you have a resolution in your packet. And then once there's a motion on the table, Karen Sims, who is the executive director of that program, is here, and we can talk a little bit about those services.
Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move approval of resolution number T 2022-03-005R, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with Champaign-Urbana Trauma and Resiliency Center Initiative. Sorry. Sorry about that. Community violence response team services, trauma-informed care training, and organizational assessment with recommendation for approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by James. Discussion.
So just briefly, I want to understand the context for this and invite Karen to add anything, and then if you have questions. Essentially, as you know, we have $100,000 we've set aside for in a funding line item called other grants. The program that we've established this year is really a tight collaboration program. It's for current collaborators, and we can add future collaborators, but this year we've really focused on our current collaborators. Meeting needs for our township participants where we lack expertise to do so. So we're looking to extend the services of Cunningham Township with experts in the field. Karen and I have been partnered. We partnered for a number of years on these issues. During the pandemic, we partnered very closely as CU Tri received funding for housing, and we were receiving a number of requests for housing. Families that were impacted by community violence, so that would be gun violence or physical assault where there was an injury, usually outside the home, so not domestic violence situations, but more community-based in public spaces. We would reach out to CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative and partner in supporting those families. We've learned a lot from CU Tri. Karen brings a lot of expertise to our community in this area. We're very lucky to have her. And in that process, we realized that a couple of things through our partnership. One is that we wanted to deepen our commitment to trauma-informed care, especially as we launch a continuum of services to the homeless, where we're working with women who've experienced a lot of sexual violence, where we're working with families that have dealt with gun violence and community-based violence, and to really do a scan of our organization, an organizational assessment. So I originally came to Karen and her organization to ask for those trainings and assessment. The trainings actually started because I have the ability to hire trainers under the admin line item. We brought in, Karen did a training, several trainings with CU at Home and our staff, and we're looking at continuing those trainings going forward. We had asked for an organizational assessment and scan, and then we've been in conversation for some months about what the role is for Township in addressing escalating incidents of community violence. We have had participants killed in gun violence incidents. We've had active participants at Township who are wounded and injured in community violence events. And we felt that we needed a strong partner with competence in this area to be working with us both ways, where we could do referrals and then they could also refer the residents to us, especially for housing and income supports. So we've really been in conversation about how to kind of tighten this collaboration that we've started several years ago and build it. And how do we resource it? My understanding, speaking to Karen, and certainly Karen, you can speak for yourself on this as well, but I asked Karen, what's your budget? What dollars, who are your collaborators? Who is funding you to address community-based violence? And her answer, this was months ago, was no one is. We're doing it, it's not funded, right? And I was really shocked by that. I do know that they receive funding from the Mental Health Board, and we've been a beneficiary for years based on that funding, because that funding is really targeted towards training social service providers like ourselves. So I felt that the situation in Urbana has been such that we really need to extend our services, protect our participants, and increase the funding available to address community-based violence. And Karen, I would ask you to speak a little bit about your community violence response team. If you could talk through kind of what that looks like and what services you offer. And then you'll see in the contract, if you look at page 2 of the contract, programmatic services, I think that gives you somewhat of an overview of what it is that we're looking to engage in, but happy to answer any questions that you have. So Karen, would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I just want to make one clarification, and then I'll explain how the Community Violence Response Task Force team works. I don't know if everybody knows, but when Danielle and I first began this work in collaboration, really informally, it was unfunded. We are a Blueprints, a City of Champaign Blueprints partner. And so we will be receiving funding to coordinate the response that will happen at Carlin in the community. That will be a weekend response. What we are proposing is in some ways a way of formalizing, making sure that we can have some availability to more intentionally meet the needs of residents in Urbana. So we see this as sort of a pilot, we hope, because we don't allow for that. And what happens is we have a phone number that is staffed 24/7 that people can call. Anybody can make a referral, but a lot of our referrals presently come from Carl's occupational health and ER department. We also have referrals that come from former survivors and other people. Once people kind of get a referral in, and referral sounds way formal, what we mean is somebody can just reach out in lots of different ways. They can call, text, fill out a referral form, any way works. We try to respond within as soon as possible, depending on what the need is. And what people do is we're the point of entry for the system. We listen well, figure out what needs are, address any of those immediate comfort and care needs. Danielle and I have partnered in the past around making sure that if there are like emergency housing, stabilization needs, that rapid response that typically doesn't exist in the system, we have had donors and again, collaborations that allowed us to meet those immediate needs. And then after that, what we offer is some comprehensive support. So for folks who have children, we connect them to the Youth and Family Peer Support Alliance. Some people, and you'll see, really have complex needs. So they need wraparound support. So we build a team and provide short-term crisis support where it's every single domain of need. We try to make sure that people are in their lives to address it. We really try to get people not just out of crisis, but into like recovery. We have this resiliency and recovery framework, and we know that when people aren't bleeding and that they have the care that they need to feel safe and resourceful, they do better. We reduce long-term and short-term outcomes, and we do that through a village approach. Not everybody, because we don't have the capacity and bandwidth and funding to make sure that everybody gets the village. So you'll see that we've got a small number of people who will be villaged, but when people have or other short-term needs, we are connecting them to people in the system. And so a lot of times people don't know that they've received services and supports through our CVRT, because we are really like, we connect them to wherever they need, first followers, other organizations, grow, other mental health providers, other social service programs. So we try to think about that whole continuum of support. I feel like I've said enough, but and around this housing piece, which is super important, our tight partnerships allow us to make sure that we're making sure that wherever people touch in the system, every provider in the system is trauma informed, particularly around the housing piece, because if I bump into people who don't get it, they re-injure me, and then people fall out of the system and don't provide the healing and support I need. So we want to make sure everybody in the system is operating from the same sort of emotional, social framework that is proactive and pro-social and doesn't get in the way of people's recovery. So sorry, I said too much.
Thank you, Karen.
Any
Did you
questions
have
for
questions?
Karen? Grace?
Thank you so much. Thanks for starting this great pilot partnership. That's really wonderful. So it sounds like you said that you are open to and interested in continuing this kind of funding or networking kind of thing. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And what's beautiful is we'll be able to have data, we'll be able to show you, have a sense of what the demonstrated needs are. We'll be able to really kind of see where people go in the system. And so, yes, we're really excited about this being a great pilot.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just point out the size of it is pretty, it is a pilot size project. So we're looking at up to $22,000 for the violence response team, community violence response team. And that would be $25 per hour for intake and general support and crisis support, and $40 an hour for that more intensive wraparound services. So you'll see that we estimate, serving 25 households with general support, 5 households with crisis support, and about 3 to 4 with the wraparound services. That would be over 2/3 of a year. We'd start April 1st and go to the end of the year. So as Karen said, I think Champaign is doing they're doing an investment in this area. I think it would be good for Urbana to start investing, we're doing that through Township. And I really want to be reporting regularly to the town board in the monthly reports. I've asked Karen for monthly reports. So instead of it being quarterly, like some of the other grants we have, I really wanted to look monthly exactly where we're at and what we're seeing in terms of the work and the unmet needs. So hopefully that will be a good feedback mechanism for our community to kind of see where else we would like to lean in.
James.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Good to see you again. I saw you at Urbana Rotary very recently. And thank you, Danielle, for bringing this to us. I do have a couple of practical questions. You were just mentioning the tracking and invoicing, and you said that was going to be monthly on an hourly basis. That's going to be aggregate for the month. Is there any kind of, how the hourly is broken up based on events? Is it just total time, or is it?
Yeah, so you look at page 3 of the memorandum of understanding, the agreement. So each month we will receive a report that is a brief narrative of activities and outcomes, including, and I've asked Karen any barriers or unmet needs, right? So this is again, a pilot where we're trying to understand what we have and what we need. The number of Urbana residents served, these dollars are only for Urbana residents. Age, ethnicity, race, and gender demographics, the initiating crisis. And we will be sensitive to confidentiality there. So that will be a general broad description, not a specific, you've seen it in the paper description. And then type of services received, and then outcomes. And obviously on a month-to-month basis, they're not going to be magic outcomes, but we'll be tracking outcomes. And then her team will present to me any participants referred to CTSOs, so that we're constantly looking to see, okay, we know these, we can kind of flag, these are the folks who came from CU-TRI, and there's some kind of community violence issue that they're dealing with as well. So that should be
25, that $25 an hour and that $40 an hour will cover what might happen if there's like a lot of cases, which would have a lot of overhead with tracking and such. That's all, it's all built in there.
Yeah, so we'll be it'll kind of be being billed like a lawyer bills you, like it's not a grant, it's actually a fee for service.
Okay.
And if it is wraparound services, they bill at 40. If it's crisis response or lower, it's 25. That includes administrative fees. So we actually just wrapped it in. I asked for like a $1 figure to make it easy. And then the training services are $50 an hour. I also put in, and we discussed a kind of reimbursed expenditure pool. So let's say they need, food, clothing, safety, transport right away. Then they don't have to ask for us to purchase that. They can purchase it on behalf of participants and submit it for reimbursement up to $4,000. So we'll have receipts on all of those things, just like any other reimbursement.
Okay, good, thank you. And then for the last, the third item, the $50 an hour for training, is that limited by your line item for training in your general budget? Is that
So we're right now we're
on that.
Yeah, so the training would come out of training. We're way under on that budget line item, so I don't expect us to exceed that piece. If we were to, we also have an administrative expenses line item. And frankly, there's been so many shifts in the budget. We will know by next month whether or not we need to bring a revised budget to you. It's just, there've been a lot, there's new money coming in that we didn't even know we were going to get, like the $20,000 for the tax credit isn't represented in the budget. So it might be that I need the town board to make an adjustment based on the new situation anyway.
All
But
right.
yes, the
Thank you.
training
That
would be
helps.
under that. What's that?
That helps clarify what I was curious about. Thank you.
Yep.
Chris.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Karen, for your presentation. And forgive me for asking ignorant questions. I'm kind of playing catch up as to what all you do. My understanding is you do interact with families that have been impacted by gun violence, which is a critical need. My question is, do you ever intervene when there's a potential retaliation situation? Does that ever come up?
So we don't do that, right? I think everybody, if you think about a comprehensive service array, there needs to be violence interrupters and people in the community to do more mediation and conflict resolution. Where our wheelhouse is postvention. So we really are promoting mental health recovery, mental health wellness, those social emotional skills. We will have somebody like work one-on-one or in group settings for people who need that kind of support. But we're not those responders. And I do know that people are talking. I know that the Blueprints has a RFA for responders, but that, I know where our lane is. And I know for scholars, I know a number of organizations do various elements, but it's just not, and I think it would be messy if we were doing both survivor response and violence interrupters, right? Like, I think us having a clear lane means that we're neutral for all parties and that people see us accessible. Because when we say that we're available to help support survivors, that could be on any end of the continuum, if that makes sense. Like, there could, right, if survivors show up and a family could be impacted if there are both a family member who, again, I don't want to say be more messier, but any end of the continuum, we're a neutral player.
Thank you.
Jaya.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and one of them is kind of a segue into from what Chris was just talking about. So I appreciate that clarification that there isn't that interruption piece. I'm curious though, in a lot of violence prevention work, we talk about kind of the secondary and tertiary impact of like how that immediate and long-term impact can contribute to lower rates of violence overall. Is that something that is part? Can you talk a little bit about how that kind of fits into this, if it does?
I could probably have this longer conversation. So in short, right now we're doing that post-vention immediate crisis response. And that's what this proposal has done. I do think the training also makes sure that the environment that people land in is a supportive environment and not a re-traumatizing environment. And then as a part of, and we're not there yet, right? But as a part of what will be unfolding in the blueprints document, our piece of it, because you have to think about that document in whole, because it is a comprehensive plan, but our piece of it is that we will be making sure that there are a variety of different trauma-specific treatments and interventions. So we'll have everything from some evidence-based practice treatments to address trauma, to making sure that things like skills for psychological recovery and psychological first aid, which are those early interventions, and crisis support exists. So if you can think about individual, family, and intensive treatment will be rolled out. We're not there yet because people have asked us. We're not there yet. It takes a while to get people trained, but we will have a continuum of support while we're also making sure that we're triaging survivors so that they don't develop more complicated needs. You know, if you think about it being in your most vulnerable, you've got to be able to have recovery skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That makes sense. My other question is a little bit more specific to the contract. So we were talking about the reporting part and keeping information more general, but I see that in number 6 under reporting, it says names of all participants. CU Tribe refers to the township will be shared. I will say, as someone who's done work with folks who've experienced trauma, I have some concerns around that and the potential impact on sharing that information. Is there a way of either getting informed consent from participants to make sure? Okay, I think that's an important, I'm seeing some nods, but so I guess my question is, first of all, is there a way of clarifying that in this document? And then second of all, what is the plan for reporting out if we are not seeing that information publicly? Because I do think that for a lot of folks who've already experienced trauma, it's important that we're protecting their privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Cunningham Township as a policy does not share or receive information about participants without written consent. So we have a shared consent document. And at any point, if Karen's team is working with someone who does not consent to having their name shared with Cunningham Township, and it does have to be specific, it says on the document which organizations, and they can strike out any of the organizations they do not want their information shared with, then Karen would simply state that there was a person, but she would not provide, and she provide demographic information, but not them. And under no circumstances will those reports be available publicly. So I know that there are certain things that can be FOIA'd, but they exclude sensitive participant information. And so certainly, you know, general information could be included. That would not be included in reports to the town board. And actually, I mean, we certainly can change the agreement, but this shows up in many of the agreements. And in every case, that is our office's protocol. So we don't, I mean, on a daily basis, people request information. I think there are several town board members who are aware of this because they've requested information about participants they're working with. And we don't, I can't even say that we're working with that participant, and I direct them to get a signed consent document. And then once we receive that, then we are able to share that if and when we receive it. So there's written informed consent about the specific organizations that we share information about.
Thank you. That's really important.
And that is definitely our protocol. However, for cross-system collaboration and coordination, that's why we have a written consent, because we want to be able to work not in silos, but we want to make sure that we've reduced the burden and that we're communicating across all the different needed parties. But we require consent, and we have a interagency release form that sort of guides that work.
I really appreciate all this information. I think this is something our community really needs, and something I think a lot of us have been pushing to see some action around. So, and I will say those rates are very, very reasonable. So I really appreciate this opportunity and all the work that's gone into this. So thank you both.
Mary Alice.
I hope I have a quick question. So I'm wondering how you came up with the number of clients that you're going to in the pilot help assist. So I think it's 25 and 40 is
Yeah,
right.
we actually reversed from the budget available because we have about $25,000 left in that line item, or 23, I think. And so we talked through reasonable rates. I asked Karen to include their administrative fees so that it was just like a flat dollar. Is very easy administratively for us. And then we talked through, I believe that there's going to be more people asking for support than we're able to fund. So that's why we're calling this a pilot and trying to use it to gather information. But it really is constrained by the township budget at this point.
Okay.
I think I'm, like we have done with shelter, I'm really interested in, as we develop the pilot and we're able to prove the concept, to talk about other funding opportunities and sources. And I know that because Karen is doing a significant contract in Champaign and she's doing some work in Urbana, and I know the county is looking at, their ARPA funds, and there's multiple providers who kind of have different lanes in this. I think the goal would be that we have kind of a comprehensive addressing of community violence where, the different funding agencies are able to come together and collaborate and kind of have a similar kind of framework or model rather than a bunch of different frameworks and models. And I would encourage you all to read what Karen is referring to as the blueprint. I believe you're referring to the plan that came out of the city of Champaign to address gun violence. And it's very long and thick. It's worth reading. I've spent a lot of time with that, looking through the details, and some of what we're doing here is really lifting off from that framework. But we ultimately want to work in collaboration across the full community to try to address this piece. But yes, that's where we came up with this dollar figure. And it really is, let's look at what we can do in this calendar year. Let's do monthly reporting, and then let's see how we can expand in a reasonable way over time that, works with CU Tri's capacity.
So this funding is the remaining of the 100,000, it sounds like.
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
that's basically what's left. Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we vote? Okay, one point I would make is there's a reason that the Champaign plan was entitled the plan to reduce community gun violence. It's not intended just to remain in the city of Champaign. So there are lots of opportunities connected with that plan, and we certainly should take advantage of them. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate your work in the community and the work of your staff and volunteers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next item is Resolution T 2022-03-006R, which is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a lease agreement with the Channing Murray Foundation for cooler space on behalf of Solidarity Gardens.
So I will be short and sweet with these last two items since we're already at 8:18. This essentially just allows Solidarity Gardens to use half of the cooler space throughout the year. Solidarity Gardens is funding the installation of the cooler at the Red Herring. The purchase of the cooler was funded by the Community Foundation. So essentially, Solidarity Gardens will be in a separate action, has requested the steering committee made up of the library, the park district, Channing Murray, but they recused themselves, and Solibratya as well as Township voted to support the investment of the maintenance. In return, we would like to be able to use it annually at $1 a year. So that's essentially just this authorizes having kind of a legal document. So if there's changes in leadership, it's clear what that relationship will look like.
Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move approval of resolution T-202203-006R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a lease agreement with Channing Murray Foundation for cooler space on behalf of Solidarity Gardens.
A second.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by Sharice. Any further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last item is approval of the annual town meeting agenda.
So this is essentially our annual town meeting. The town board must approve the agenda. And then we need to put it on file prior to the meeting. And essentially it looks the same as last year, including the disposition of personal property. And just as a heads up, I believe the largest, we've gotten, we got approval for much of the property. There's a few items that we missed last year, and we are wanting to sell the car, which is basically at the end of its useful life for Township, and purchasing a new car next year that will allow us to do safe transport with larger volume of people. So that will be on the agenda. It's a public in-person meeting. The town board members are not required to attend, but you're certainly welcome to. It always helps to have an audience, and we'll be going over the financial and program updates as we'll go over the audit as well as program updates from the assessor and supervisor's office.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Hand up.
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
Motion passes. With no further business before the town board, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much. Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks. And when the clerk is ready, you can indicate that. We'll move into the city council meeting. Are we ready to go, Phyllis or Darcy?
Yep, we're
Okay,
ready.
great. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council. It's Monday, March 14th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey,
Here.
Ms. Colacetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next item is approval of minutes from the February 28th meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is that Grace?
Yes.
No,
Moved by Chandra, seconded by Grace. Are there any substantial corrections? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is additions to the agenda. We don't have any tonight.
I believe there is an addition to the agenda, actually.
Oh, there is?
Grace?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I would like to move to add the presentation on food waste and plastic bag tax by students of Dr. Eric Green at the UIUC IC program, I believe. And I was trying to think about where to put it. I don't know if it makes sense between the public inputs or just before or after. I'm open to a suggestion on where in particular.
A second.
Given that, why don't we go ahead and do that first for a 10-minute presentation? And then we'll keep public input together.
That is fine. I can move to do it before public input.
Will the
I'll
clerk-
second.
All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, who did I forget?
That motion passes.
If I could say point of order, I sent an email and mayor for some people who would need to be promoted for that presentation.
When was this, when, I did not see an email on this. When did this get sent?
Just very recently, just before this meeting.
We really need to have a little bit more heads up in the future. So promoting to panelists would be Tyler Swanson, Jamie Abbott, Christina Garcia, Jenna Schaefer,
Think of this bullshit.
You're muted.
Ashley Toposlu, Alexa Smith, Christopher Eng, Maya Case, and John Hopkins. Did you provide that to Wedrago, to Borima?
Yes. I'm not sure if we have just Dr. Green there, maybe with students in person, and we don't need to let them all in. That would be great as well.
That is correct.
Okay, so none of them need to be promoted as panelists. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so go ahead, Dr. Green, you'll have 10 minutes.
All right, I am going to share my students' presentation and they will take over. Give me 1 second here.
Hello to the City Council members. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Alexa Smith, and I'm a part of the Environmental Leadership Program at the University of Illinois, along with my classmates here. For the past several weeks, we've been researching food waste and food insecurity in the Urbana community, and we're excited to share with you the research and proposals that we have for you. So as a bit of backstory, each of us has our own unique connections to this issue, but I wanted to share something personally that draws this issue close to my heart. So my freshman year, I joined an organization called Project for Less, which was the first student group that I participated in after visiting their booth on Quad Day. I remember walking up to their stand where they revealed to me that while Champaign County is one of the most food insecure counties in the state, there's simultaneously 500,000 pounds of food waste stemming from our university dining halls each year. And learning that these two issues exist simultaneously made me really upset and perplexed. So I've taken a lot of classes, including natural resource economics, environmental policy, and sustainability analysis. And I've also participated in several student groups and campus units aimed at addressing these issues. But unfortunately, 4 years later, as an exiting senior, I'm afraid to say that despite all of this hard work in both campus and the community, this issue still very much exists. So that's why we are aiming to kind of address these issues through some different ordinances. And our mission is to prevent the loss of resource-intensive valuable food from entering the landfill, reduce landfill tipping fees, and provide nutritious foods to food insecure individuals in the community. We know that the Urbana City Council has discussed the issue of food waste pretty extensively, so we won't belabor these points, but the overall rate of food insecurity is projected to increase 3% in the coming years, and about 17% of all garbage sent to landfills in Illinois is in fact food waste. So in order to address these issues, we propose the council to develop a food waste diversion regulation in conjunction with tax incentives, specifically focusing on grocery stores and limiting pre-consumer food waste from these sources in the community. Based on several ordinances of different cities and states, we recommend that it is mandated for designated grocery stores producing more than 1.5 tons of food waste every week to either donate or compost these scraps based on whether they're edible or non-edible. And the timeline for this is projected to be at least 9 months, which is similar to the food scrap proposal that has already been discussed. Some of the challenges that we wanted to bring up that we've looked into include enforcement, quantifying this waste on the end of grocery stores, and then transportation and logistics for the food waste.
Now, there's already some similar practices in place in other towns and cities across the United States. Boulder, Colorado, for example, is a town similar in size to Urbana and is also a college town. They have a zero tolerance policy on their food waste program. So it encompasses all residential, commercial, and businesses versus our proposal that only focuses on targeting the largest producers of food waste. Now, we're hoping to modify the New York and Massachusetts bills to focus on how if you make over a certain amount of food waste per year, you abate by that amount and donate and divert it. Now, there's already some supporting legislation in place to help make these things easier. We have the Illinois House Bill 3093. This is a state plan to cut food waste by 50% by 2030. So Urbana could get ahead of the curve there. Along with the Good Samaritan Food Donor Act, it helps food donors be in the event that in case there's certain protections available to them if they donate food. Along with the concrete bin construction project currently in place at the Landscape Recycling Center in Urbana that is hoping to take in food scrap. Now, cost benefit analysis. We have some guesstimations and estimations on the cost to implement this program, with the cost around $40,000 to get things really started and going on the producer side. But we also calculated that there is a revenue possibly from the LRC, with each tipping coming in from producers, along with some savings for the city and waste haulers. Okay. Thank you for listening to us today. We hope you can take a look at our draft proposal later on.
And we have one more group. Let's share a slightly different presentation here. Try and keep it under 10 minutes here.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our presentation today. Just earlier today, I was walking back to my dorm and I noticed 3 different plastic bags stuck in the trees and in the bushes. Along with plastic bags being a significant contributor to municipal litter, they also clog storm drains and they clog waterways. Particular to the Champaign-Urbana region, they also reduce agricultural productivity. This issue is aggravated by the prevalence of plastic bags. Statistics show that there are 100 billion plastic bags used annually in the United States. And the figure on the screen shows that only 15% of these are recycled, while 68% of these are sent to landfill. In order to address these issues, our group of University of Illinois students proposes a tax on disposable bags.
Now, you may be wondering why we're proposing a tax instead of a ban. After researching, we realized that bans are ineffective, as this encourages the retail stores to offer either thicker plastic bags or even paper bags. This reverses the initial impacts of the ban being implemented in the first place. An additional alternative that may be considered is mandatory recycling programs. And although these programs can be low cost, this places the burden of recycling on the consumer directly and does not guarantee that bags will be recycled, which is why we propose a bag tax instead. A fun fact is that exactly 10 years ago today, the Champaign City Council voted in favor of a bag fee on single-use plastic bags, yet there has been no progress made on that policy since today, which demonstrates the overall importance of this issue and how Urbana could take the lead on a bag tax.
As you'll see on the fact sheet on our screen, we recommend instituting an 11-cent per bag tax based on an analysis from policy researchers at Brown University. This 11 cents accounts for the range of negative societal impacts caused by disposable bags that include littering, landfilling, damage to recycling processes, and the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced by bag manufacturing. In order to avoid imposing a financial burden on low-income residents, we recommend exempting SNAP and WIC recipients from paying this tax. Now, should this tax be implemented, we do foresee two scenarios resulting from this implementation. Scenario one being a low response, high revenue scenario, and scenario two being high response and low revenue. Under a low response, high revenue scenario, we foresee a roughly 28% decrease in plastic bag consumption in Urbana and predict from that a tax revenue stream for the city of $680,000 per year. Under a high response, low revenue scenario, we foresee a 90% decrease in plastic bag consumption and therefore predict a tax revenue stream of $94,000 per year.
Overall, a bag tax would provide the city with a new stream of revenue to fund green projects, such as providing residents with reusable bags. And then additionally, the evidence that we're going to go over proves that bag taxes decrease plastic bag use and littering rates, which would result in a cleaner cityscape.
So there are many examples of plastic bag taxes being effective. One of the first and most successful plastic bag taxes was implemented in Ireland back in 2002 for 15 euro cents per bag. This tax decreased plastic bag use by 90%. The amount of litter from plastic bags decreased from 5% of all litter to 0.22% of all litter. And this tax also garnered strong support from the public as a result of the noticeable decrease in plastic bag litter. In Illinois, the city of Edwardsville enacted a 10-cent fee on paper and plastic bags in July 2021. This tax decreased disposable bag use by 87.5% in the 4 months following. Chicago originally enacted a plastic bag ban in 2015, but repealed it in 2016 after finding it to actually waste more plastic. They changed the policy to a 7-cent bag tax in 2017. 1 year after implementation of the tax, the likelihood of using a disposable bag decreased by nearly 28%. Given the success of these programs, we know a bag tax in Urbana would be successful in reducing disposable bag use as well. Thank you for your time, and we request that the city look into the feasibility of implementing this tax.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to public input. And tonight, we're prioritizing with council approval the first 30 minutes of public input specifically to receive public comment regarding the use of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. We plan to take input at council or committee meetings on the following dates. In addition to tonight, which is March 14th, we'll be taking input on March 21st, 28th, and April 4th. There will also be a listening session in City Council chambers on Tuesday, April 5th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. This is in person. And then finally, we encourage the community to provide your opinions via the survey at ccrpc.org/Urbana-ARPA. And all this information is available now on our website and social media. So to get us started here, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to prioritize first 30 minutes of public input tonight for comments related to ARPA funds. And for the public who are listening, if you want to speak to the ARPA funds as well as make comments on other topics, you will be able to speak on the other topics, but we'd like to prioritize ARPA comments first so that we can get them all in a concise manner. So is there a motion?
I will move that we prioritize the ARPA discussion for the first 30 minutes of public input.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Grace.
Question, does that mean we're still doing up to an hour total? Like, is this an additional 30 minutes for ARPA or?
At this point, there's a total of 1 hour for public input unless the council extends. So we'll see how it goes. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey. Miss
Yeah.
Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colacetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay,
Who
thank
did I
you.
forget?
Hey, Barima, could you put that slide up to get us started? Okay, great. So again, we do have the survey live and it can be found at the address on the screen here. And tonight, just some background information to remind the public, the council has identified the 5 broad areas or priorities. And the question to you tonight and for what we're seeking information on is which ones do you think are the most important or what we should prioritize for ARPA funding. Those include sustainable infrastructure, human rights and social services, public health and safety, adequate and affordable housing, economic recovery and development. Other questions you may choose to address are what are the outcomes you would like to see from use of the ARPA funds? And do you have any specific ideas for funding projects or programs related to the priority areas? And of course, we welcome comments, anything you want to say related to the ARPA allocation. So if you are interested in commenting on ARPA allocations, please raise your hand and we'll call on you first. Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, and you'll have 4 minutes, please. Is Dr. Underwood unmuted?
It looks like she's still muted.
I'm trying to unmute myself. Is it unmuted yet?
Yes, you're unmuted.
I know it, but you know what? They're going through all kinds. It shouldn't take 5 or 6 times to unmute me.
Well, we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm glad because I want to make sure I get to use my time. First of all, I was saying that it's so unfortunate that the public gets so little time. You know, we couldn't say anything at the other when the city council was meeting. I understand that. You know, they've done theirs, but we the people, don't forget, we the people. It's all about the citizens. And we get so little time to deal with this situation. I hope some people are putting in something because it's not like what happened. I'm not saying we need to be champagne, but we need to get something in for these people who are going through the trauma. Yeah, I heard Miss Karen. Don't get me wrong now with the other, but let me go on so I can say what I am concerned about tonight is match the meal. I talked about this before, and I called it the SWIFT program at Parkland. And I did get back because y'all met with them and they said they didn't need nothing. But the 52, there was 52 people in the program in 2020. Now I understand with information that I've seen that it's the lowest enrollment in the 16 counties, 16 other counties, and second in the lowest attendance. Something needs to be done. And so I'm just saying we need to increase the stipend and increase the enrollment. I know what y'all said before, and I don't have time to talk about it, but I do have time to say that we know that people need help. We just finished with Channel 3 praying for peace, and we do want peace. We got to reduce the violence, victory over violence. Yes, but we got to do something for the people. Give them a leg up. Now you can help, and which is right. I want to see you help the refugees and all that, but you don't want to give. I'm just gonna say that black and brown And right now I'm talking about the Black people who this country was built upon. I'm not angry, but I'm being compassionate and passionate, if you will. We need to do something for these people. We got to do something for these families. We are the faith community. We've been dealing what we can do, but we got to have action. And I can give you what I said on radio the other day. We got to have action. Champaign gave $3 million, not been justifying it ever since on Channel 3 News and the newspaper. Why you got to justify when you got all those other? You had 25 million. And you gave $3 little million to these people and got somebody to speak to meet it out like crumbs. I don't want Urbana to do that. I don't want Urbana to do that. We need to help these families so they can help their children. Now, I know if they got to have a job, $50,000 or more for this SWIFT program. And why can't you match? You got millions now. You said one time, it's not recurring funds. Why we know that. So help these people. Help these people. Give them a leg up. Oh, I'm gonna help the people that's the war is going on in that time, Ukraine. And I'm gonna help the other people. But I'm saying we got to help the people here. Now I'm not gonna answer that phone. They can call me back later. I want to get my minutes in. Please. I don't know how to tell. I'm old now. I can't even talk anymore. But the people get what I'm saying from my heart. We got to help these people and help these families. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. We're not going back to Africa. We're going to stay right here in America. This is our country too.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next up is Brandy McCoy, and this is to comment on ARPA allocations. Go ahead, Brandy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. For ARPA allocations, I'm off script, so I might bounce around a little bit, but I did see the presentation for a wellness center at a recent meeting, and I do like the idea of a wellness center. I think it could be a great benefit to the city of Urbana and its residents, but I do agree with another commenter. I can't remember who it was, but you know, she pointed out that a wellness center would take time to build, and in the meantime, you know, we're not using these funds for people who are hurting as a result of COVID, right? And since Chris Evans the other day said, everyone he's talked to has said jobs, 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 right? We need to get people jobs. So I would also like to voice support for Matching the Mill for the SWIFT program. I know, Mayor, you've said that it's a one-time thing, and that seems to apply that it wouldn't be feasible to match the mill with the ARPA funds. But what if you put $1 million, you know, fund? I don't know how the, you know, back end finances work, but so there's $1 million fund for a one-time grant. And once those funds are gone, they're gone. But in the meantime, we can increase the stipend to increase enrollment. So the people who run SWIFT said, we don't need money, we need enrollment. Well, I would theorize that people aren't enrolling maybe as one reason because they can't afford to, because we all have bills to pay. You know, it was pointed out also in a recent meeting that $50,000 can be maybe hard to live on in our community, right? So, I mean, folks got bills to pay, and we can't just drop work to jump into a program to get better work, right? So if we had this fund set up with $1 million and we gave Urbana residents who are participating in the SWIFT program $50,000 a year, that'd be 20 residents to go through the program. If we gave them 25, that'd be 40. If we gave them 10,000 a year, broken up into 12 months, right, monthly stipend, that would be 100 people who could go through this program in the city of Urbana. You know, and maybe it takes years, right, for us to go through all of the funds, but we're progressively helping the community versus spending years building a wellness center that in the end is probably going to have a lot of benefit, right? But we're leaving people out in the meantime. So I just really want to advocate for matching the mill. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it could be a really beautiful thing that the city of Urbana could do for its residents. I mean, it would encourage, I feel like it would encourage people to live in Urbana. It looks good and it feels good and it feels right. So, I mean, there's, I would love to see and be able to be proud of my community in that way, you know, really advocating for people and giving people what they need so that we can address this crime problem that we've been discussing, right? So that's what I have to say about the ARPA funds. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. Next speaker is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Give me 1 second. My line is tied up. Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Great, great. Hi, my name is Eddie Pratt Jr. I am a resident of Champaign. I come here tonight to speak about the ARP fund allocation. As other speakers have already alluded to a little bit, you know, the campaign Match the Mill, which I am the de facto, I guess, campaign lead of a coalition of people and organizations stretching the county now and outside of CU borders. We want to see equity in our communities. Surely this is what a lot of these different efforts are about. And yes, you gotta, at the end of the day, you gotta be able to pay your bills, and it's not really rocket science, and I've said it before, but when all of your basic needs are covered, for the most part, there's not really much violence on your mind after that. But that also shores up other gaps, like having the ability to afford childcare or having the ability to raise your children in a way that keeps them from letting the streets raise them. Currently, we have people that are making just due on 20, 25,000 a year. It is really hard, almost impossible to keep your family together with that type of money. We know that, but this is something that has been happening in the Black community for an extremely long time. But that is not all that you could do with this amount of money. There is an issue of infrastructural racism as far as the Ellis Drive sewer situation. I'm sure you are aware of it, as advocates have been tirelessly putting in so much work over all of these years. And this has always been pushed back. It is shameful that this same pattern exists in this community, a pattern that we've seen across countries in Black neighborhoods, where Black neighborhoods are constantly, woefully, willfully neglected to the detriment of the Black residents themselves, who are also a part of that same community. So you do have some opportunities to right some wrongs and do some things that are a little forward thinking, I guess. At the end of the day, the people that are impacted by gun violence are not those who are $70,000, $80,000 earners, house paid for and bought and all of that. It's not. That common denominator is troublesome. And I hope that in good faith that we discontinue the level of cynicism that has been apparent around this issue, because this is more than about me or you or any one of us. It's about all of us here together. And so in solidarity, I hope that these things are things that you consider. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you. Next up is Fiona Monroe.
Good evening, City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I would like to strongly encourage the City Council with this ARPA funding to correct the infrastructural issues within the Dr. Ellis subdivision. As the previous commenter was mentioning, this is an issue that folks have been speaking out in the community about for up to 10 years now. And it seems ridiculous that no action has been taken to decrease the effects on homeowners of a mistake that was made by the original contractors who were developing that area. I think, you know, the spirit of the funding is to redevelop and rebuild our communities, and this is an issue in our community that should have been addressed a long time ago, which needs addressing now. So I would just like to mention that. I also am also in solidarity with the previous commenter and several others in terms of the Match the Mill campaign and the SWIFT program and increasing their funding so as to increase enrollment. The statistics seem to suggest that this is underutilized unusually of similar programs, and that seems to be a source of concern. It's a very important program and a very powerful one for folks that need that access to learning. And so I think that would be a very useful thing to be funding for this community. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to specifically address the ARPA allocations tonight? Joan?
Oh, sorry. Diane, I just want to let you know that there was an email that was sent that was asked specifically to be read into the ARPA discussion.
Okay, we'll do that after we hear from these folks. Joan Gray?
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak today. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I would just like to piggyback off of something some of the other commenters have said and just say that the infrastructure rebuild around the sewers, I understand that it's a very expensive project, and that's the sort of reason why action on it would be delayed. But especially with all of these additional funds, right now seems like a really great opportunity to take care of a long-standing problem because we do have all of these extra funds to invest into our infrastructure and making sure that some of our less some of the neighborhoods that were less well developed can be brought up to par. And with these extra funds, if not now, then when? It's just going to continue being kicked down the can. The can is going to be continued to kick down the line if we continue to allow it to be so. So I think now would be a great time. Besides that, investing in our people, besides the moral and good reasons, pragmatically, helping people earn more will come back and invest into the town, right? If someone has the ability to earn more money, they'll be able to spend more, invest, and potentially buy houses, right? So it can end up coming back into the community. So it is a reinvestiture. And besides just the common easy good, there's some other economic good on the back end. So it should really be considered. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you. Next up is Julie Watkins.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Julie Watkins. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I believe what people have said already is a good thing. I think that we really need to put support into jobs, and that is a good use for COVID response funds because there has been much economic problem, and it does contribute to a lot of the violence problems that people really need the jobs that will help them be able to stay in a good place. It will help a great deal. And we also should be rectifying the infrastructure problems for the minority group in minority community in Dr. Ellis subdivision. And I want to be supporting that as well. So I'm really in favor of really focusing the ARPA funds into stuff that the COVID has especially impacted very vulnerable people. So we should be working at what those people are specifically asking for within, structures that are already there. I mean, Parkland's already there, so we can help these people get trained and get better jobs. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Patrick. Could you state your name for the record, Patrick?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Patrick Thompson. And so I want to echo what everybody else has commented regarding the ARCA funds being used in the African American community for economic development, training, jobs, as well as the city hiring a diversity compliance officer for long-term, short and long-term development. As we all know, that the problems that we've been seeing in the African American community have been existing for years. We can go back to, slavery, Jim Crow laws, education. We can look at the drugs that were, flooded our communities, the mass incarceration. We can look, and currently the gun violence. And any and everyone in an African American community knows that economic development has created the issues in the community. And that the societal impact that we've had in our community has devastated the community. And if we don't, the leaders, municipalities, city officials make this a priority, then we're going to continue seeing what we're seeing in our community. Now, when it comes to enforcement, it comes to the criminal justice system, then we are always finding ways to find money to combat that. And you cannot, and there's no way you're going to be able to, enforcement, law enforcement, and mass incarceration to get out of the problem that has been going on for years. So I just, this is something I think it should be, it should be discussed. There should be a plan development. There should be some hiring. And these are things we, and the community as taxpayers should be entitled to. And we should not have to continue to see the same type of status quo that we're seeing now. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to address the council on the ARPA funding allocations? Okay, are there any other general comments for public input? Please raise your hand.
So,
Mary Alice, go ahead.
Diane, may I read this letter?
Yes. Please.
Okay, this is on ARPA. It's about the ARPA survey. So it says, Dear Mayor Marlin, City Council members and City Clerk, for the ARPA survey, we believe that it is crucial that in addition to check boxes, we ask for the closest intersection for the Urbana respondent's place of residence. It will help the city to have more accurate information for future analysis. Residents from different wards might have different needs. It was done during the Imagine Urbana survey, and mistakes can easily be made using the check boxes feature alone, especially on a smartphone, from Kenita Fay.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the Urbana City Council? Please raise your hand. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone. I want to thank everyone for your comments. Again, we'll be repeating this the next 3 meetings, plus we'll have the in-person meeting on April 5th, and the survey is now live. Okay, we'll move on to council input and communications. Any council members want to say something? Grace.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for the public and appreciate your input here and on the survey as well, and the town hall. And also feeling free to reach out any other time. I wanted to apologize with a little bit of confusion and awkwardness with the presentation tonight. There was some miscommunication on who needed into the Zoom room, who was versus who was just presenting and all in one place. I definitely see that it's not the smoothest, and I think it could have been avoided. This class was one that reached out to a few council members earlier in the start of the semester. Myself, a few other council members, even the mayor went and talked to this class, I believe. Maybe this was a different one. I might be confusing it with another one. But this class I've talked to and some staff, and they've come to the Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting. And they did reach out for a presentation earlier, and I think we're told no. So I think that that could have been avoided if we could have allowed them a 10-minute presentation in the first place. Thank you.
I'll just clarify that. They did reach out a second time. I met with Scott Test today, and I wanted to get some further information and background from him. And then I was going to reach out to Dr. Green. So in the future, if you want to schedule a presentation, you really need to go through the clerk's office to do that, because none of us had an indication that this presentation was going to be on the agenda. So, but yes, I did meet with Scott Test today and was going to reach out back to Dr. Green. James.
Class is over, so this was the last chance.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up with Kenita Fay, who wrote the letter that Mary Alice read earlier. She did notice that the street crossing is on the, what's the 3rd page of the survey, so it is in there. But she also raised the concern that getting that information is important and suggested that it be moved up. I did share some conversation with her and said it was unlikely that we would change the survey once it was already open, because that's not a really good practice. But that is the feedback, that it's really important to get some geolocation information associated with some of these requests when to see if they're related to particular awards. Thanks.
Mary Alice.
So I just wanted the community to know that Kevin Garcia and Kat Trotter have been doing some neighborhood meetings regarding the R7 rezoning. And so the meeting that was originally scheduled for this week has been rescheduled. So it will not be taking place on the 16th as originally announced. It'll be taking place on Tuesday, March 29th at 7 p.m. And it will be over Zoom instead of Ring Central. So people who are interested in having input in terms of what should happen with the R7 zoning, which is traditional university housing. So it's the old university certified housing, the fraternities and sororities, and the boarding houses. They're primarily located east and west of Lincoln, probably about two streets east of Lincoln. That's where the vast majority of those properties are currently zoned.
Yeah.
I was going to share some of what Mary Alice just shared and also just thank, I heard back directly from Kat, but Kat and Kevin for being flexible in response to community feedback that this is U of I spring break. And so many of the residents who live in that part of our city would be out of town and unable to attend, and also being receptive to hearing that using a platform other than Zoom that people were not familiar with was a barrier for folks. So I really appreciate that level of attention and flexibility in response to community input rather. I also did want to kind of follow up. I do appreciate Dr. Green being persistent. I understand that it is inconvenient when things are added last minute, but that's why we have the option to add additions to the agenda. And as Grace tried to mention, this was the end of the class. And so this is a class that had been in contact with many of us throughout their course. And I think that it is important that we remember that students are part of our constituents and part of our community, and that they have a chance to speak as well.
Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that did public input tonight, but I just want to kind of flag the fact that, you know, those of us that have been in this town for over 40 years have watched economic development happen in West Champaign. We've watched economic development happen in the sports center of the University of Illinois. We've watched economic development happen in the residential halls of the University of Illinois. We've watched Green Street develop all those high rises. We've watched downtown Champaign develop an entertainment and liquor district with a bunch of hotels. We've watched Stone Creek and East Urbana get developed. So, you know, here we have this unique opportunity, once in a lifetime. We'll never get it again. This ARPA money needs to be finally dedicated to, you know, a group, as Reverend Underwood said, you know, people need help. And so I just hope that we can do that as we go forward. Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Hello.
Hi. Your hand blends into the trees behind you, so sometimes we don't see it. Go ahead, Sharice.
Couple of things that I wanted to say was this. I am in solidarity regarding the issues and trying to actually been doing some research regarding the sewer issues with the Ellis Drive subdivision, and how not just how this was laid, but also how the sewer stuff was laid, but also the development itself, because this happened a long time ago. And finding various lack of evidence is evidence of how something was stuff was neglected and ignored. So I'm still looking into that. The other thing I wanted to say was that and I've been conferring and talking to an engineer about that. The other thing I wanted to say was I really appreciated the presentation that was given. I lived in Los Angeles County when they did their bag thing, And I would maybe even suggest that, because it happened very quickly. And I came home with a lot of reusable bags. When I moved back, I've got like all kinds of canvas bags, because you would have to, if you wanted a bag, if you forgot a bag, I was going to suggest that they think of paper bags, not just plastic bags, but paper bags be sold. If you just had to have a plastic bag, you had to pay for that as well. So, you can come in with your own bags. That was something that I thought that would be maybe helpful to this particular group. And that took off. It seemed to take off like wildfire. There wasn't a store that I would go into to get groceries where people didn't bring in their own canvas bags or reusable heavy, the heavier, I don't know what kind of material it is, but the Trader Joe's bags, or they bring in some bag that, like from Ralph's, that would be a canvas bag as well. And also different bags to hold cold or hot substances. That is something that I think that they could add to their repertoire, as far as giving suggestions, not just taxing people that use plastic bags, but take plastic bags off the table altogether and say paper bags. And that may be a help. I think Urbana could actually do that. I think we could probably work that. So as far as, adding to that information, that might be something considering or to consider if we decide to move forward with that type of plan at all.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments? All right, just to follow up, that was an excellent presentation tonight. We have always supported students speaking to the council, and we try to accommodate them. And as I said, I was getting background information today, and then intended to reach out to Dr. Green. I was not aware that this was the last night the last week that their class was meeting. But we strongly support and encourage participation from all members of the community, including students. And in fact, I'm scheduled to talk with several classes yet this semester. So just to make clear, we do welcome input. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. There is none. We'll go on to reports of standing committees from Committee Chair Grace Wilkin.
Thank you. It's been a while, so let me know if I don't have it right. But on behalf of Committee of the Whole, I'd like to move, consent agenda items, ordinance number 2022-03-010, ordinance amending Schedule H of Section 23-93 of the Urbana Local Liquor Code Traffic Code, requiring stop signs at a certain intersection: Oglethorpe Avenue at Rainbow View, Montgomery Street at Rainbow View, Michigan Avenue at Oglethorpe Avenue, Michigan Avenue at Abercorn Street, and Michigan Avenue at Montgomery Street. And item B, resolution number 2022-03-026R, resolution authorizing the acceptance of a DCEO grant, Nevada Street Lighting Project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jaya. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes.
And then for the regular agenda, I would move for approval, resolution number 2022-03-024R, resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bonds issues, single-family mortgage revenue bonds and related matters, Private Bond Cap Allocation Assist Programs Series 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have Sheila Dodd on the call. Is there anyone else we need to admit for this discussion, Sheila? Okay.
Sorry, Diane. I was looking to see if the assist representative was on the call, but I don't see him. So.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Well, someone has something to say. Grace?
Thank you. Yeah, I usually do.
No, I was referring to the dog actually, but go ahead, Grace.
I see. I just want to also apologize for misunderstanding this last week. I was not understanding the target area. I thought they were talking about that was their like target income level was 100 grand and up versus 80 grand and below. We've discussed that before. I definitely still have concerns about the income range now that I understand that that's the maximum. I think that makes sense, but still have some concerns about people at lower income who have the serious barriers of approval and down payment and things that this doesn't address as much. And I'm curious, still, I don't know if we got the map on the target areas or if we know more about what the target areas are.
Thanks for asking that, Grace. I did reach out to the representative from Assist and asked for a map, and he provided the census tracts that it's targeted towards. And the majority of those are kind of north of University Avenue and west of Lincoln. There's one kind of down by the Philo Road district. But he didn't have an actual map that he could share with us at this time.
Any other question? JS, go ahead.
Yeah, I was hoping, Sheila, you could speak a little bit more to, what exactly does this investment, like, so we're giving it to the assist program, correct? And then can you explain a little bit more how this process works, right? This is a considerable amount of money that we're investing to help provide a tax credit. And I feel like there's a little bit of a gap.
Well,
how those pieces.
We're not providing money. We're providing the opportunity for them to purchase private activity bonds to implement this program. So it's not city money. It's just an opportunity that each year the state of Illinois gives communities to target priorities. And so the initial memo that was submitted last week kind of did a balance of the two needs that staff sees in the community, which is down payment assistance as well as affordable housing development. So I just got a long history of doing affordable housing development. Assist has a long history of doing these tax credits, but it's not cash from the city. It's not cash from the state. It's private activity bonds that they go through a bonding agency to get.
Sorry, I think maybe I used the incorrect terminology there, but I mean in terms of the different ways we could allocate these bonds, right? Because there were a number of different categories you listed, including directing some funding towards nonprofit organizations, the housing assistance, et cetera. But this is not a down payment assistance program that we're talking about with Assist.
No, it's an actual tax credit. So each year that the person lives in the home, they get an actual $2,000 credit off of their federal income tax. And that's for the life of them living in the home.
Right, I understand that. So my question is, how does the bond relate to the credit, right? So it's a federal tax credit. So is the bond what's funding that tax credit? Is that how that's working?
I believe so. Let me check again to see if David's available. Yeah, I don't see him. So I believe so. And I did ask both the agencies that put in a request for the funding or the opportunity to do the bonding. And they said due to the technical side of how this works and the expense of the bonds, that it isn't something that makes much sense unless you have a large development assistance that you're requesting for. Usually it's over $10 million from what they have seen. So it's not something like that a Habitat for Humanity could reach out and apply for to use for this program. It's not on that small of a scale. It's a very large scale project that the expense would outweigh what they would receive.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, so that is coming from the people who are already receiving the funding, or that's coming from the state who's, clarifying how this money can be allocated?
The state, the experts in the field.
That's helpful. I would like clarification on exactly how this process works, right? Like, how it is that this is resulting in that tax credit. Just because, again, looking at even the 3 projects that were listed for us, this particular piece, the assist program, I still don't know that I see, we got into this discussion last week about what is low income in Urbana-Champaign. And I appreciate you've provided that follow-up information of, that HUD definition, which is very different than the census information about median income. But I think that clarifying exactly like what is that process for the bond going to assist, and then how does that relate to the tax credit would be helpful to me.
So the way that I understand it, and if I'm off on your question, is that when somebody goes to a lender and gets a loan, at the time of that loan closing, if they meet that criteria, the lenders work with the assist program, and they actually, the individual gets a actual certificate that they can file then with their taxes. They can also, outside of assist, they can get assist, but they can also get down payment monies as well. So it's nice that these programs can build on top of each other. So the management of the assist is done through the actual lenders. When they see people that can qualify, they put them through. Did I answer your question?
Kind of. It's, again, I'd be curious about like what is there a percentage that assist then gets versus the lenders? How is that allocation actually distributed, right? Of for that tax credit.
Yeah, and I'm not in the weeds at that level. I can ask David Roush to come back and speak on this. Let me keep checking my attendees to see if he's in there, the meeting, but I'm not in the weeds at that level.
Okay, I do have another question, but I'll let other folks go.
Chandra.
Hi, Sheila, I know you mentioned that you reach out to like the lenders. I'm trying to find it. Local lenders through direct mail seminars and media advertising. What percentage of local lenders do you know sort of, I guess, offer this information to like loan applicants or people looking to buy their first homes? Because I assume that it's an optional conversation for them to have, correct?
Right. It is an optional conversation. Make sure I'm muted. Yeah, I am. It's my dog that keeps yapping, so that's why I keep turning my mute off and on. Anyway, yes, it is through our local lenders, and we have a community reinvestment group of local lenders that meet monthly, and these kind of programs are talked about at that meeting. And many of them, I mean, I don't have a percentage, but many of them promote this because it is a benefit to their borrower that they have access to these kind of programs. And so they work with them to do the application process and to get the certification. But to give you an actual 50% or 80%, I can't give you an honest answer.
Okay. And I know we sort of written off the EIEDA project or CAP request, but I had a question about that. So it says the city may be able to access these funds for affordable housing. The use of the word may, do they have a choice if, Urbana decides to, I don't know, do the bond cap for the EIEDA? If money is given from Urbana, is it a requirement for them to do projects in the city limits?
I'm going to ask that Andrew Nesselhut from IHDA be promoted to a panelist because he can answer the development questions. Yeah, it looks like he's on.
Good evening here.
Good evening.
So I can actually probably even answer some of the questions on the Illinois Assist too, but I don't want to speak too much for it. So if you guys want to fire away, I'd be more than happy to help here. In terms of Chandra, your question, I don't know in terms of the pledges that another organization would make, but I think the conversations that we've had with Sheila in terms of the Illinois Housing Development Authority and what we would use the cap for is we cannot guarantee that it would go to the city of Urbana on a development perspective, because we still have to follow guidelines. And what I mean by that is projects have to come in, they have to be underwritten, they have to follow our qualified action plan. So I think what we've done with other municipalities in the past is we've almost looked at it as from a little bit of a look back percentage, right? So we've said over the course of the last 3 years, these are some of the developments we've done in your area. And that's why we're kind of having some of these conversations around cap. We can't get into a situation where we would guarantee that the cap would be used on a multifamily project for the city of Urbana, in this instance.
So what's the likelihood, I mean, has there ever been a time where the bond cap request has been fulfilled by Urbana and a project not been done here?
So, it's not necessarily in terms of the likelihood, not you guys, but the city, a developer would have to have a project in the city of Urbana that would have to move forward. Essentially, they would then put in a request to the Illinois Housing Development Authority in terms of, hey, we have a project. This is like a pro forma. This is a common application. We have all of our standards that we would go through. And then essentially we would go through our own approval process. Is it feasible? Are there concerns with the market area? And we would run through our programs and procedures in terms of actually getting that program off the ground. So again, it's not that we could specifically promote a developer to do something in your city. It really has to come from an outside party to us, and then we look at it from a feasibility perspective.
Thank you.
Jaya?
Oh, I've got another question about this program. So we saw the different income amounts and the caps for purchasing properties. Is there a way of getting some information of who is the target audience? I understand that is the cap, the highest that it can go. And we saw the loan amounts for the properties that it has applied to most recently. But I think I was assuming that this was designed to benefit low income families, but I'm not sure that that's accurate. So I would appreciate clarification.
Sure. So again, for our projects, it's a little different in terms of the broad scope that we go down. So we generically have a single family program and a multifamily program. When you're looking at a multifamily side, back to Chandra's question, we had a little bit in terms of a specific project. When we're dealing with those projects, generally speaking, they are below 80% AMI. They could be below 50% AMI. It really, again, it depends on the target borrowers that developer is bringing for that project. Mm-hmm. On the single family side, it's a little bit more broad. So we have requirements that can go up to 120% AMI. And essentially what it boils down to is if those borrowers apply for our products in terms of getting a loan, right? So if we only have, for an example, 10 borrowers in the state or in the city of Urbana, and they're all at below 50% AMI, that's the demographic we end up with. Mm-hmm. If we have 10 borrowers that are 120% AMI, that's the demographic we end up with. Again, we work with originating banks and lenders that are essentially pushing our products, so to speak. And we don't really have any dictation in terms of what borrowers go into those banks that need to purchase a home. It's really kind of the afterthought of these are the rules and the constraints that we can lend around. And then whatever borrowers come in, essentially makes up our demographics. I can tell you on a whole, for the majority of our borrowers, we are generally below 80% AMI, but that is not 100% of what we do on the single family side.
And so just to clarify, are you speaking about your program, or we had the proposal for the MCC Assist program, which was where my question was?
So for the MCC program, I don't want to comment in terms on breakdowns or AMI bands or anything along those lines. That's really not my program. I would just wouldn't want to speak out of turn. So.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you trying to balance, these various aspects. I think that's kind of where my question lives, is with that MCC program, the assist program that we were presented some information about last week. Like I said, I was assuming that was designed to help low income families, but whatever definition we're using, many low income families do not end up paying any tax on these properties because they are low income. And so if it's a tax credit program, then it inherently is not going to benefit low income families or households. So I think that clarification of if they're so low income that they're not paying taxes, who is the target audience?
Sure, and I think that's going to be a question for the other participants. That's really not what I'm trying to speak to today.
Sure. And it's not designated just to you. I don't know if Sheila has information on that. I understand that the representative for the assist program isn't here either. But that's
yeah, Jaya, I wouldn't necessarily say that home buyers don't pay income tax, federal income tax. I would think that they would, and that's where this credit comes into play.
For many low income home buyers, they end up not owing income tax. So that's where my
but even though they don't owe it, they still should file and get this credit.
Okay, so you're saying that even if they don't owe, that they're still entitled to a credit. That's an important point of clarification as well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because that was one of my questions last week. So there's like earned income credit it sounds to me like this program is very similar. So let's say that you have a tax credit of $2,000. You would get, even if you don't owe $2,000, my understanding is you would still get that $2,000. Sheila, is that correct?
That's the way I understand it, Mary Alice.
Yeah, so it kind of operates just like the earned income credit, which is very similar to that respect. So earned income credit is if you make a certain amount of money, then you get on top of that $1,500 for say. And if you never paid $1,500, you still get the $1,500. So the second question is just really a point of clarification. We're talking a lot about the income limits, the size of the loan and the house. So since this is a state program, does that mean that all of this determination in terms of how much you can buy a house for, how much money do you have to make, is that made by the state or is that made by the program?
I believe it's made by the program.
Okay.
The state gives us the authority to designate our priorities. And if we don't designate, then it reverts back to the state and they will allocate our bond cap however they wish throughout the state.
I don't know if this is too far in the weeds, but I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about is a house in Chicago costs very differently than the house in Champaign-Urbana. So if it's a statewide program, either dictated by the state or the program is a statewide program, I could see where we would have this very large increase in terms of mortgage, like a $350,000 house in Chicago is going to get you something very different than it's going to get you in Champaign-Urbana. So that's why I was just trying to understand a little bit more about the loan, the maximum amount of loan.
So, I don't want to, again, I'm not trying to speak in terms of the assist program, but trying to bridge some gaps. In terms of the authorities programs, the AMI limits that we use are by HUD. So they would be different based on cities throughout the state of Illinois. And they also vary by household size. So an income band for 80% AMI would be different if you had 8 individuals that you were filing for, or it would be 0, or 1 or 2. It's essentially a large grid. And that's what we operate under in terms of when we're looking at our programs.
And I believe that's the way it's done with assist as well, that it varies depending upon the region.
Thank you. Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the information on this. I'm trying to understand kind of the opportunity cost of doing this. While I understand that it's not costing the city or coming directly from our funds, I'm just trying to understand what is the cost of choosing the assist program versus something else. And so I'm just wondering if kind of what the other options are. And so what I'm hearing on a separate note about IDH IDHA from Andrew here, which is not what we're talking about right now, is the kind of planned development for affordable housing projects that come from a private developer and then you could later fund. Is that correct on that part, Andrew?
That's one of the things that we do. And so we have two avenues in terms of how we use this resource. One of them on the multifamily side is kind of what we talked about there. Essentially, a developer would come with a project and you can generate these low-income housing tax credits to essentially bring in private equity to build affordable housing, right? That's the multifamily side arm of what we do. On the single family side, what we do is we issue tax exempt bonds in order to raise capital to be able to provide loans and continue our down payment assistance programs, which of that we have a variety of them. So on the single family side, what we're doing by trying to garner as much cap as we can through, this ordinance or resolution that we have here today is to continue to allow us to get as much resource as we can so we can continue to issue tax exempt bonds. Tax exempt bonds allow us to continue to offer mortgage rates at a lower rate than if we didn't have tax exempt bonds. Because if we did not, then we would have to borrow at a taxable level. And essentially that would be more expensive in terms of the cost that we would have to provide to our borrowers. But again, that's not in just the state of or the city of Urbana. That's throughout the state of Illinois.
Thank you. Because what I'm kind of wondering here is, doing this assistance program, the other thing that we're talking about, that with the MCC, yes, and just thinking about so that we have the other option. So we're talking about splitting our bond allowance between the assistance program and IHDA bonds that has the multifamily development and down payment assistance versus the other option, which is the tax credit. One point I'll just spit out too. I think if we are to continue the assistance program, I think better advertisement would be great for individuals as well as lenders. I know I shopped around for lenders in this area just a few years ago and never heard of this program. So I think better advertisement is really important if we are going to continue this. I don't know if the city can, we can help with that end. And wondering about, we've talked about a real serious need for a homeless shelter and more affordable housing projects. And it sounds like there's not control on what comes in as far as the state goes, but I also don't know if there's a way for us as a city or community to kind of advertise those kinds of developments and have them be able to take advantage of the kind of program through IDHA. Because I'm leaning towards, I would rather see more go towards that because it sounds like there's a variety of options and assistance and actual down payment assistance versus the tax credit one that we're currently talking about. So, thanks.
Yeah.
So just coming back to this, whether it's a flat rate or a percentage, I'd been reached out to by a community member who provided some more information that suggested it was a percentage. So I would like clarification on that, whether it's a percentage or a flat rate. In the memo we had last week, it describes it as a percentage of the interest paid on the home loan each year. So again, clarifying, is this a, 2,000, I thought that was the cap of how much someone could receive in the tax credit, not just a flat given. So I think that clarification is important. And this isn't to harp on things too much, but rather just to clarify if, as we are directing this funding and we're talking about who's going to be impacted, it's not that, we don't want people to be able to buy their homes, but if we're talking about someone who is just able to buy a nicer home and get a tax credit versus someone who might not be able to afford housing, those are very different things. And so clarifying what is the concrete benefit to residents in Urbana, especially as it relates to low income residents, is really important to me.
Jay, I did verify or confirm with the assist program that it is a flat $2,000 credit that is available to the home buyer for each year that they live in the home.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. The nice thing about it, like I said, is it is a credit. It comes back to them for every year that they live there, but it also can be blended with down payment programs, which sometimes that's always not an opportunity. If you do one program, you can't necessarily take advantage of the other. And by offering it through Assist. They could also apply for IDA down payment programs or Federal Home Loan Bank programs. There's a lot of different down payment programs out there.
So the one clarification on that, and just for this group, so everyone's on the same page, is yes, what Sheila said is correct. But we do not allow the use of an MCC program with our own, with our DPA programs. The reason of that is because since the MCC is a credit and it comes from this IRS resource, or this federal resource, we can't be also issuing tax exempt bonds to, you know, fund loans and DPA, and then also use the same amount of volume cap for an individual to be getting a credit. It's kind of like double dipping from the IRS's perspective. They essentially need to be able to get the benefit of the tax exempt rate, or they need to be getting the benefit of the MCC. So just a little bit of a clarification in terms of how we view other MCC programs.
Chandra?
Has there ever been an instance where the bond request has gone to IDHA and no developer has sort of had a project where the bond was used?
So yes and no. So, I mean, I guess your question though is kind of still trying to refrain to the city of Urbana though, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, if city of Urbana in this fictitious example here would come to us in terms of having a project, you know, we would not be looking at allocating this specific pot of money to this program. You know, essentially what we're doing is we're adding, you know, the 6 million or whatever the total amount is here today in terms of the larger pot that essentially this city of Urbana project would be able to allocate from. A lot of times when we're talking about 4% deals, 6 million in bond capped is really not going to get a deal done. Doesn't mean it can't. I just think a lot of times what we see in terms of needs, in terms of equity for affordable housing, it's a lot larger request. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me in terms of what that average would look like. So again, what we're doing here today is we're adding it to the overall pot. So even in your example, if we didn't get the seeding from you today, and the city of Urbana came to us with a transaction and it went through all of our qualified action plans, it went through our underwriting, feasibility worked out, we would still go down the path of issuing, you know, bonds for this affordable housing project for the city of Urbana. It has nothing to do, there's no tying to your specific resource. Again, that resource is just going to a larger pot, which allows us to continue to provide affordable housing, not only in the state of Urbana, but across the state of Illinois.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. That was very helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions? Grace?
Thank you. I had a few more for Sheila. And you said it needs to be decided by May, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, thank you.
And I was wondering about the current programs, because I guess thank you for that explanation too. It's not like there are programs depending on this funding that would end right away, or kind of what's the situation on that? I'm just wondering, like, do we have time until May, or it's like the current agreement is over and there's going to be a gap? I'm just trying to understand the situation and the timeliness of this.
Sure. So Sheila, if you don't mind, I can talk to it.
Sure.
So essentially what happens every year is municipalities such as yourself get a dollar amount for cap, and it's based on your population times by this year it's $110. I think you guys are about 41 and some change, so you get about a little over 12 million in terms of cap. Okay, so every year you guys by May 1st or these dates that are decided by state regulation guidelines, you have to identify what that use is going to be. For whatever reason, let's say you guys have no use. You're not going to give it to IDA. You're not going to give it to, you know, the assist program or anything along those lines. It goes into this bucket. All right. And this bucket then opens up to other municipalities like yourself that they may have a larger need for it. Now, once those individuals don't have a need for it, then it goes into this larger bucket, because there's 3 buckets. There's something called home rule, which is a municipality such as yourself. Is non-home rule, which is municipality like yourself, but a lot smaller. And then there's state municipality governments, which is who I work for, the Illinois Housing Development Authority. At the very end, all of the cap that is not used throughout the state of Illinois goes into this final bucket. And essentially every year we lobby for the rest of it. We don't get all of it, but we have such a need in terms of affordable housing that we essentially are trying to lobby for the remainder of whatever's left. Regardless of your decision in terms of the cap for this year by your May 1st deadlines, you will get allocated new cap the following year. So this is an annual thing every year in terms of your guys' decision with this cap and how you choose to allocate it. You guys can change course every year. Obviously from a soft sell, I would prefer you don't do that if you go, in my direction, but I'll just aside. The point is that from an opportunity cost, you guys are not locked into anything long-term, right? You're going to get new cap the following year, and the following year, and the following year, as long as this resource is available from a federal level.
Thank you. And I was wondering, maybe more towards Sheila, would it be possible for as the city for us to solicit other projects, kind of like my understanding of kind of like how it was with Pinewood? Was there some kind of soliciting or recruiting? I'm just kind of wondering if there's a way to be proactive for some of these projects on a city end.
I don't know the history of Pinewood, Grace, because I wasn't at the city at that point, but I know that we worked closely with IDA to get that development with the Housing Authority. They were one of the funders to help with it. So I think as developers are working in this area, they're well aware of this program and they reach out to IDA or, if they had a need, they would reach out directly to us, I would guess. But I don't know that putting off this decision is going to make a difference. We can certainly put out a request for a proposal. I'll reach out to other communities and see what they have done. I did reach out to Bloomington and Normal. I know what Champaign does, and I know what Urbana does, but I'm certainly willing to do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah, and so Grace, from your point here, I think that what Sheila said is correct. I mean, a lot of times when you have municipalities and what we've seen in terms of projects that they want to get built, and I'm going to make this up. Let's say you guys have a district that is, you've been trying to target this for a certain revitalization, whatever that may be. A lot of times what municipalities, what we've seen has done, has put out an RFP or some sort of request for information to the developer community to start looking at projects and building something. At that point, those developers, they essentially help create the package that comes to us. And then that's when we look into the review process and things like that. So again, we're more than happy to help on any front. I think that a lot of times it's the first step is really the municipalities or the cities identifying a need and trying to figure out what that's going to look like before it gets to us in terms of the resources that we can provide as help, not only in terms of the volume cap that we're talking about today, but the other funds that we have in terms of providing affordable housing throughout the state of Illinois. We're talking on a global scale here. Again, this is just trying to put in perspective in terms of what we can try and do over the course of a couple of years or whatever the course is of a project. So on the single family side, over the last 4 years, we've done about $3.5 billion. On the multifamily side, we've done about $1.5 billion. So we're talking a lot of volume in terms of the resources that we can put to use. Again, we don't guarantee anything, but what I'm trying to get at is these resources go into a pool that really make an impact on affordable housing throughout the state of Illinois.
Thank you. Yes, I would definitely see for our community. I mean, I think we very much need a homeless shelter full time that can accommodate all of the need for the community, and definitely always need more affordable housing. And I think getting people into home ownership for the first time when there might be, close, but still struggling with some of those barriers, I think would be really important ones that I would love to see. So thanks for explaining that process. And it sounds like then that's regardless of how much we allocate in the bond cap here, that there's still all those possibilities either way it goes, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, we have a motion on the floor made by Grace and seconded by Mary Alice. Is there discussion? Jan?
I would say for myself personally, I feel like there are still questions about the Assist MCC program I'd like clarification on. So I would recommend sending this back to the committee of the whole. This particular one. I don't have any questions or concerns about the other one.
I second.
Was that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
And can we make a motion with the motion on the floor?
No, that's fine. We have a motion on the floor, so either, Phyllis, I need some direction here. Do they withdraw that? Can they be asked to withdraw that motion?
They should, yes.
Okay,
All right, I will ask that the motion be withdrawn then.
I will withdraw my motion.
does the seconder concur?
I'll second.
No, that would be Mary Alice.
That would be me.
Oh, okay,
Sure.
go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
And then I
Is
would
there a
make
new
motion to send the MCC assist one, which I can read the full. Let me get back to it. Resolution number 2022-03-024R, resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in conjunction with private activity bond issues, single-family mortgage revenue bonds and related matters, private bond cap allocation assist program series 2022, back to the committee of the whole for further discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. James.
Yeah, I will support this going back to committee because I was ready to approve it tonight. I think it would be a really big mistake for us to take this availability of capital away from opportunity for this community. We do need to have a spectrum of solutions to help in this area. This is one of them, and I hope by taking it back to committee, we can work through a lot of the questions some of our council members have about it.
Any other discussion?
And this is Sheila. David Rash, the representative for the assist program, isn't able to call in on the Zoom. And so I guess I would ask that if you could just give me your questions and then I could share them with him and he could get you detailed answers. Because some of this is obviously, you know, I don't feel like I'm giving clarity. So I think if we just took it to him directly, that might be helpful to you in the end. So if you could send me questions, I'd appreciate it. Mary Alice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with James. I was ready to approve that this tonight. I think that we've been talking a lot about homeless shelters. We've been talking about building new affordable homes. There is definitely area that we need to be able to expand home ownership. And I think that the assist program fills some of that gap, that we really don't have a lot of programs at the moment that the city works on that allows for that home ownership. And so that's one of the reasons why I was in support of this. So I'd really like to see this move forward as quickly as possible. So any questions that people have remaining, to get them to Sheila as soon as possible so that this can then move forward, hopefully to city council.
Jay.
So I would echo, I certainly agree that home ownership is really important and can certainly make a generational difference, right, in terms of accumulation of wealth and resources. I just would like clarity in terms of who this is benefiting. I think that's still unclear to me. You know, like Grace, when I bought my home, this is not something that I heard about. I'm really curious about how this is being advertised, who it is being advertised to, and who it's benefiting, right? So it's not to say it's not valuable, but if we're talking about someone buying a $300,000 home, they don't need a tax credit. I would like to see.
If you look at the list of the mortgages for this area, none of them are that high.
I understand, but that's the cap, right? So I'd like clarification on some of those pieces, and I will be sure to get those questions to you to pass along since we didn't have a representative here. I was holding those questions, right, to hopefully get them answered tonight. And since that didn't happen, I will get those to you as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote? I think we are. Will the clerk please call the roll?
We're voting for sending back to committee of the whole too, just to clarify, right?
Yes, that's the motion on the floor.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey? Ms. Hersey?
No.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And again, the request is for people to send their questions into Sheila so they can be prepared for the committee next week. Okay, last item under the Grace.
Oops, sorry, that's me. Next, I move for approval resolution number 2022-03-025R, resolution approving the transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bonds, single-family mortgage revenue and related matters, private bond cap allocation, IDHA Series 2022.
Is there a
I'll second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion. Grace.
Thank you. I think we've discussed this one pretty well in the last one. Just wanted to say thank you to Andrew for coming and answering questions and for that important work, working for affordable housing with the state project and sharing more about it. It's really great to learn more about the program. So thank you.
You are very welcome.
Any other comments? Chandra?
I wondered, since the initial recommendation was a 50-50 split, does sending the previous one back to Cal, are we still approving the resolution for 50-50? And could that possibly change given the outcome of what may happen with the other resolution?
Well, at this point, it is a 50-50 split. So if you wanted to change that at this point, you probably could.
Okay.
Is that right, Sheila?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I mean, I would recommend or motion that the split be 60-40 instead of 50-50 with 60 going to IDHA. I don't know if that's if we can do that now with the other thing on the floor.
Okay.
I would like to see more going to IDHA.
Mary Alice.
So I'm wondering if, and Sheila, so let's say during the committee of the whole next week, when we talk about the assist program, if the council decides that we should have a lower amount go to the assist program and give a higher amount to this one, can there be a new resolution so that we can go ahead and move forward with the 50% now? And then based on the conversation at the committee of the whole, we can then have a secondary, basically an addendum to this one, if that decision, the split changes. Is that possible, Sheila?
I guess, sure. I'm not quite sure how to do that procedurally, but I could work with the clerk's office and the mayor on how to do that.
Just because I think part of what I'm struggling with right now, at least my sense of the council, is that people are in support of this motion, rather that is a 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever that split is. I think that it seems to me like council is in support of at least 50%. So if that's the case, we should, in my opinion, we should go ahead and approve this right now. Then if we change our mind about the other one, then we can have an additional one for this one, if that makes sense.
Like I said, I would have to work with the mayor's office and the clerk's office on procedurally how to do that, but sure, I would think it was possible.
If you worded it, it's a minimum of 50%. Would that work?
Sure. I can change the resolution to say that if the vote says that.
So in that case, we would need an amendment to the motion, right? To change the phrase and in this resolution to be a minimum of
50% for the IDA allocation.
Correct.
Would someone like to amend the motion? Grace.
I think Sharice had her hand up first too. Her hand was hiding in the leaves there.
Sharice, go ahead.
I kind of have a question for Andrew. I'm not well versed in banking and so on and so forth. At this moment in time, regarding the tax credits and stuff, do homeowners get a tax credit for the interest on their mortgage like they used to?
Yeah, well, so this is outside of the realm. Now we're talking personal here, right? So outside of the realm of, the financing that we're talking about, the down payment assistance programs and things like that. But technically, when you file your taxes, yes, you can do that. There's two ways to do it. You can take standard deductions, right? Or you can do itemized. And if you were to do itemized, you could include your interest on your mortgage. Realistically, the way that the tax code has changed since 2016 or so, itemized deductions are generally not as beneficial unless you have a really high interest payment on your, this is the big SALT tax, right? State and local taxes deductions. So you're better off going with, the flat deductions, generally speaking. But it depends on each homeowner and their situation, how they file their withholdings, and things of that nature.
So either of these programs really would actually be beneficial to the first time home buyer regarding what they could possibly recoup during tax season.
Yeah, technically yes, but again, they're also a little different, right? The MCC is a credit, whereas you're talking about a deduction for the other. So there are different tax implications when you're kind of looking at this as a whole.
Okay, but it could be a benefit still.
It could be, that is correct. You do have
I'm
the
just
option.
saying, in addition to being able to claim that flat tax, they can also get credit or something else regarding these programs.
There is an option when you're filing your taxes to include interest on your mortgage if you wish. It may not always be the best way to do it in terms of filing your taxes. Again, it depends on your tax income bracket and what you're filing. But yes, that is an option that you have with home ownership. Again, I can't advocate if that would be the way you should file your taxes.
Right.
That is an option that you could have. That's correct.
I understand that. So depending on what one's mortgage is and if they qualify for one of these two programs, they could end up on the plus side when they file their income taxes. Meaning they get a refund, or they get something back on some level, or at least they don't have to pay regarding it.
Again, yes, that is a possibility, but there's a lot of factors that go into filing your taxes outside of just this item.
Right. I just wanted to understand that, as opposed to them not having any of this, though.
Correct. I mean, in theory, same concept. If you're a renter, you don't have the option of including interest on your mortgage because it doesn't exist. You don't have an MCC because you don't get a credit on your home. It doesn't exist. But again, trying to put on my tax caveat hat here, in terms of, it just depends in terms of how you're filing from an individual status, married couple, everything that you would kind of work through in terms of tax season. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think we can accomplish what I'm hearing the council say they want to do by on page 1 of the resolution, last paragraph. It could read, pursuant to section 6 and 6.1 of the Illinois Private Activity Bond Allocation Act, the city hereby transfers and reallocates a minimum $2,294,820 of its volume cap for calendar year 2022. That would give you the option of increasing that after the discussion next week. Would that work for you? Grace as the motion maker.
I think before changing the motion, I had some questions and thoughts on that as well. I don't feel as comfortable with the minimum amount, or at least 50%. I would just rather it be specific, especially since there is another contributor. It doesn't seem to make sense to say like at least 50% and then commit possibly 50% to another organization. And it's just not really clear. I would be more in favor of just sending them both back to committee if that is kind of the question. If one depends on the other, we have until May. Weeks doesn't have a negative impact on it. It seems like it might be easier than changing or passing a whole other resolution to just take another few weeks and have a final answer on both of them. So those are my thoughts before changing a motion.
Well, we have a motion on the floor for approval. Do you want to change? Do you want to vote on the motion, or are you going to withdraw it?
I was just wondering if there was any more input from council members.
Jaya.
I personally am comfortable with the at minimum language, just because I think this is a program that I at least would like to support. Pushing at least half of that bond allocation to, and then, we can always increase it if we decide that's the right thing to do. It might well be that next week in the committee of the whole, we'll decide we're going to keep things exactly as they are, and then a further resolution wouldn't be needed. But I think that this creates that flexibility personally.
Any other thoughts? Mary Alice?
Yeah, I agree with Jaya. I think that I would like to see us move forward today on this one, and to accommodate potential future conversations using at minimum is completely acceptable to me.
Further thoughts? Then we'll need a motion to amend the motion to include the language reallocates a minimum $2,294,820.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by
second.
Chandra, seconded by James. Could the clerk please call the roll? And this is on the amendment to the motion.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
No.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, that amendment passes. And now we'll vote on the original motion as amended. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to reports of special committees. Don't believe there is one tonight. Reports of officers. Do any of the city officers have a report?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay. I do have a couple of things. One, I wanted to let people know that city staff met with staff from the city of Champaign, and we discussed potential areas of collaboration on the community blueprint for reducing violence and related to the use of ARPA funds. So we'll continue those discussions and be bringing more information to the council. Also wanted to let you know that we made the announcement today that Pride Fest 2022 will once again be in the city of Urbana, and that'll be October 1st, 2022. And then this coming Thursday is the return of the world's shortest St. Patrick's Day Parade in downtown Urbana. That will take place between 5 and 7 p.m. The parade starts at 6:30. It ends at 6:35. And it lives up to its name. So if you're going to be in town, you're all welcome to attend. And then we are making plans right now for return to in-person meetings for the City Council, Committee of the Whole, and all boards and commissions for April 4th. And we'll be sending out more information about that next week so folks can prepare. New business, there is none, and we'll move on to discussion item.
Diane, I think Chandra had her hand up.
Sorry.
I just had a quick question. Earlier, they were talking about the R7 zoning and that sort of meeting things. I mean, granted, it's in the WUNA and not necessarily my ward, but I was curious, would we be getting information about that? And if like that meeting would be posted online for the whole, everyone to know about and get more information on?
Yeah,
I thought maybe that would be a report for Carol would talk about it or something.
There are materials posted online from the Plan Commission that have been prepared for those meetings in the past. So we can send links to the memos prepared by staff and the background information and maps and that sort of thing. The neighborhood meeting, I assume that's going to be a Zoom, I believe. That's recorded and that should be available as well. And then there's another meeting coming up at the Plan Commission on March 24th, I believe. Is that correct? I'd have to double check the dates, but we can provide links to a substantial amount of information on this topic.
Yeah, yes, a little background as we were getting all the emails. I hadn't heard much else about it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, we have one discussion item, and that is Sheila, and it's rental assistance for individuals impacted by gun violence.
Thank you. Over the past 6 or 8 months, there have been a group of community leaders, social service agencies, people who provide rent assistance, the cities, both cities and the United Way, meeting to talk about the needs of families who are impacted by gun violence. And so one of the needs that has been identified is the ability to provide rent assistance for those families. Excuse me. Champaign County Regional Planning Commission has developed a program. As you know, they have a lot of experience in the TBRA programs, and they're requesting funding to administer a rent assistance program for families impacted by gun violence. The program would provide rental assistance vouchers through the home program and administrative funding through the CDBG program to implement the program. So they are wanting to launch the program in May, and this funding will help with that initiative. They're requesting $85,000 in CDBG funding and $110,000 in home funding for the vouchers. Because of the urgency of the program and the limited number of agencies with the capacity to implement a TBRA program, staff is requesting to move forward with the grant agreements without issuing an RFP. Currently, Courage Connection and Champaign County RPC are the agencies implementing a program.
So this isn't a vote tonight. This is seeking your opinion on whether or not we should move ahead with this as presented. And then we'd come back with, would there be an agreement? There'd be an agreement. Is that correct,
there'll be 2 agreements. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So discussion. Grace.
Thank you. Sheila, did you say that this would be grants for RPC and Courage Connection? Is that right?
No, currently those are the 2 agencies in town that are running a TBRA program with our funding. So, and they're the ones with the capacity and the experience. So this would be funding for Champaign County Regional Plan Commission to set a separate fund or program aside with priority for those impacted by gun violence. So each program, like Courage Connection's priority is families impacted by domestic violence. Champaign County Regional Plans Commission's existing program for TBRA is a self-sufficiency program. So there's key things that families have to do in order to improve, like maybe they're going to school or maybe they're doing some job training, and then they get some intensive counseling over that year. And so those programs are different than this one, although they're the same type of funding source.
And I imagine there'd be more details to come on how
Yeah.
much distance and details and all that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Details would come with the agreements and the memos. Mary Alice?
So Sheila, just to put a clarification, so these are CDBG funds and home funds, and sometimes I get mixed up a little bit in terms of the lead agency. So I know that Urbana is the lead agency for some of these funds, which then are distributed throughout the entire county. Are these going to be dollars for the county, or are they going to be dollars for the city of Urbana?
They are dollars for the county. Therefore,
Okay.
the priority will be for people impacted by gun violence.
Okay, so this would be available to anybody in Champaign County, and then the idea is that RPC would run that program.
Correct.
Does it have to go through the community development group?
Our CD commission?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. We will bring it to them if we get a head nod from you this evening that you're in favor of us kind of moving forward. We have a meeting next week that we'll bring it up with them and discuss it. And then the CAL meeting, the first one in April, we will bring the agreements to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chandra?
So you mentioned these are home funds. Are they home ARP funds or just solely home funds?
They are only home funds. Home ARP, we have just started the implementation process for creating an allocation plan. So it's very, very early, but we have a large pot of home funding, and TBRA is one of the eligible uses. So it'll be totally separate from the ARP program.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely, this sounds like a great opportunity for the community. So I would be in favor of hearing more details and seeing this sort of program come to fruition.
Mary Alice?
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to lower my hand, and
Okay.
sorry about that.
Could I see, I think I'd just like a straw, unless, James?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would like to see staff proceed and bring us more information on a program like this.
Okay, I'm seeing 3 head nods. Are there, I see 4, 5. Okay. I think we got it. So we have direction to staff to bring information and the agreement back to council. Grace?
Thank you. Yeah, definitely support, pursuing this. Looking more it would be helpful for me to just knowing what other things that the home and CDBG funds usually fund or have been funding. I know that we've had some projects come up kind of one at a time, but I think that would be helpful for me of kind of like the big picture on home and CDBG and how much it is that's going where, just kind of like an overview would be helpful for me.
Sure. And excuse me, next week, we're going to be bringing our draft annual action plan. It's very early in the process, but the 30-day comment period is opening up tomorrow. So we'll be next Monday night having a staff report on that. But kind of just a quick rule of thumb, Grace, home funding has to produce a housing unit. So whether that's rent assistance or whether it's building a new home like Habitat, or whether it's rehabbing homes like First Followers, at the end of the day, it has to produce a housing unit, and CDBG has to help low to moderate income citizens. So it's infrastructure, social service program, that type of thing. So it's just in a nutshell, that's a quick way to think of it.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have direction. James?
Oh, James.
No, I have a quick procedural question before we're done, if I can get it in. If we're done with the current discussion.
I believe we're done with the current discussion unless anyone else has a comment. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am going to be traveling for work for the next 2 Mondays. And while I expect to have connectivity, I'm a little bit concerned that I am supposed to be chair and that might create a problem. Is there a precedent for trading chair roles?
Yes, that can be accommodated.
Just in case, I'd prefer to do it just in case and then take a responsibility in April for someone taking these next two.
Sure. So the next person up would be Mary Alice.
Yeah, and I'm actually traveling on Monday, and in case there is a plane delay, I think maybe Chris should swap.
Okay, you're up, Chris. So
Thank you,
next
Chris.
week's committee of the whole will be chaired by Chris Evans, and then we'll go back to James after that. Okay, great.
Very good.
All right. I think that takes care of business for tonight. So with no further business before this council, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.